Okay, all right, 6 o'clock it is. Everybody, welcome to the Tuesday, July 20th council workshop meeting. We will go ahead and take a quick roll call. We are still having our meetings remote for the public, and while we work on a way to make some additional strides in IT so we can have the public in person and at home. All right, so do a quick roll call. Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy.
Present.
Councilmember Kurtz. Present. Councilmember Garcia. Present. Councilmember Follier.
Yes, here.
Councilmember Langford.
Yes, here.
And I know Councilmembers Dunn and Severs are out on family items tonight, which are excused.
I would make a motion that we excuse Councilman Dunn and Severs for the 6 o'clock. Second.
Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor of excusing Councilmembers Dunn and Severs, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, so first on our agenda tonight is review of City Council rules and procedure. We're getting close to being finished. So last time we made it through section 6. So you have a copy in your packet, and then there was a newer copy on your table when you got here, Council. And so, so that included the additional edits from 1 through the end of 6 from last week's meeting. So my thought was, so we can move forward to the City Council priorities, which is also on our 6 o'clock agenda here, that we finish what we started and start with section 7, make it through to the end, and then we will go ahead and incorporate any additional comments. We'll get that out to the council and have everybody send any additional edits, into Ann. If you could copy Katie and myself, that'd be great. I know as Mayor Pro Tem pointed out earlier, we do still have a couple things outstanding with Sean that we want clarification on. And with the hope that the next time we meet, we'll have the 99.5% draft for everybody. I'm sure there'll be some small edits at the end. So if there's no objections to going that direction, and when we finish 7 through the end, we'll move on to our council priorities for 2022. All right, so on your screen, great, thanks, Todd. We're starting with section 7, page 9 of the document. So a lot of this stuff is pretty benign. Section 7.1, we have clarified that people signing in for public hearings do not need to give their address. They just need to note whether they are a resident of the city of Liberty Lake or not. Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question on that. I'm curious what the council feels on that comment, where they are residents of the city of Liberty Lake. Do we interpret that as that they are a resident of the physical Liberty Lake, or included possibly the lake or surrounding area?
The city of Liberty Lake is the
Council.
city. Oh, sorry.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I didn't see. Sorry, Councilmember Garcia. Go ahead.
Perhaps what could be added would be City of Liberty Incorporated, the incorporated area. That would define the city of Liberty Lake versus the county, which is
Mayor,
I have a question.
go ahead, Phil.
I must have missed it when we went previous rotation on this. Why are we losing the address portion?
You're not allowed to ask that. Actually, Councilmember Garcia is the one who brought that to our attention a couple years ago about not requiring an address. But they do need to say whether they're part of the incorporated portion of the city.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, you had your hand up again?
I was just going to say, I certainly concur with Councilman Garcia's recommendation. I think, because what I'm after is that absolutely define without question. It's a resident of the city of Liberty Lake that I'm interested in hearing from. If they're not a resident of Liberty Lake, I just feel they need to identify that.
And I think some of that falls on the responsibility when we're going through the procedures for public hearings and even citizen comments to make it more clear when we call out, here's what we need from you. I can be more clear on that as well.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Langford.
Building on what Councilperson Garcia said, I like the last word she used, and if we could just enter it into the red outlined line, it would be they are a resident of the city of Liberty Lake proper. Requires less alteration to the verbiage.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Would they be excluded from commenting
No.
or not?
No. anybody can comment. We just wanted to know, I believe the intent is to know whether or not they can vote and they're, well, not everybody's registered, but they are a citizen. Okay, so if there's no more comments on 7.1, we'll go to 7.2. Council will take public testimony during a public hearing, the public comment period, and prior to passage of ordinances and resolutions. We added that a couple iterations ago, so we will be adding public comment to resolutions. Persons appearing before the council, we changed from should to shall limit their comments to 3 minutes, and it will be, in this case, it's kept by our IT tech, Todd Henderson, who's managing the meetings, and we'll have it displayed on the, either here in the chambers and or on the Zoom meeting. Any additions, changes to that? Councilmember Garcia, go ahead.
There are two schools of thought here. Perhaps when there's a large item on the agenda and there are many people interested in speaking to it, oftentimes we say in government, if you're going to say the same thing as the person before you, perhaps you'll defer to the next person who has something to say, other than what's already been said. But on occasion, there comes a time when you want clarification. And I think we, as a council, should be able to seek clarification of the statement made by a citizen. And doing that, we might possibly add something that allows us to request clarification from the speaker rather than just say thank you and have them go on. So I would think that we might want to entertain either limiting their time between, it depends on the number of people coming to speak, between 1 and 3 minutes, as well as, in addition, to say that perhaps there may be clarification that council or the mayor may need in order to really get the full thrust of that question or presentation.
So if you look at, if we move down, just jump ahead, we'll go back to 7.3, section 5, it's on the next page, page 10. It does note that council members shall not reply or respond in any way to testimony provided by speakers at the public hearing except to request specific clarification. So we've got that covered in here.
Right, but it says council may not respond.
May not respond, but they can ask clarification, ask for clarification. It's already, it's in there. Yes. No, it's okay. All right, go ahead, Councilmember Follier.
I may be wrong, but I think I've seen other councils, not this one, depending on the topic and depending
Just have to get it
on the
closer.
topic and depending on the attendees, it seems like I remember, I'll just say City of Spokane, changing the time frame because of the amount of people that were there to talk. So is there anything, there's no issues with changing it based on the topic?
So what I've seen is some councils will limit the time period that for everybody, total, not individually. We have, at least in 11 years I've been here, I don't think we've really had a problem with that. We've had some excessive comments at one period at a time or another, but nothing on a regular basis. But if the council wants to entertain putting a limit on the time, but I kind of think that squashes the spirit of getting citizen feedback, but that's just my opinion.
So just to know that that's available to have it in writing, I guess, is question, do we?
Well, if that's going to be a potential change to the process, it would need to be documented. Councilmember Garcia.
In the case of issues that have to do with proponents and opponents, I would say that it would be used during that part, because if you have a proponent, 15 in the same room, and they are for a particular project, then they are just, as we do, voting yea or nay. So they come forward and say, I agree with the last speaker, or they can be, the council, the mayor can ask the group that sits in the audience, if you would like to have one representative who represents your side of the issue while the opponent or opponent speak for the group, then we may give you 3 to 4 minutes to speak. And that encompasses everyone, and it takes, it still allows everyone their due diligence and the service they want to provide to us, but then it allows us to move more people to the podium.
And that is in keeping with Robert's rules.
Yeah, and it has part of that in there, so I guess I look to you guys on those timeframes, because it does, back in section 7.1, it does talk about at least ordering the speakers in groups, but there's nothing in there to your specific point about, consolidating those comments. So look for suggestions on wording, timing.
I'll go ahead.
Sure.
So I guess the more I've thought about this and listened to everybody else, I say we just leave it like it is. It's fairly rare that we have that big of a topic with that many, people that want to participate. So, when it happens, I'll sit here and listen.
Go ahead.
If I could offer something to the council to consider, because I think what's important, meeting management, and you're right, if 100 people showed up and they all wanted to speak for 3 minutes, it would be a long meeting and blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what, I think the most important thing is that everybody gets the same amount of time. That the pros or the cons don't get, there's not a different time allotment. So if you see an audience full, a sea of people that want to comment, you might say, in the sake of meeting management, why don't we try to keep our comments brief and no more than 10 minutes or something like that. Just a thought.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Keep in mind, council, that we do have 3 minutes for each speaker, but the council does have the power. If it's something we really want to hear, we know it's going to take more than 3 minutes, we have the power to change that, to give that individual 5 minutes or 6 minutes.
As long as you give the same equal time to everybody else at the same meeting. Yeah. And there was, I'm trying to see where it is, about not being able to donate part of your time to another speaker. I know that's in here somewhere. We'll get there in just a minute. So, so 7.2, we just made it through that. Written comments. So the newer part with regards to written comments received for a public hearing will be acknowledged at the hearing with the commenter's name, and whether they are a proponent or opponent, written comments will not be read into the record. Any comments, issues on that? Okay, we'll go ahead and move down to 7.3, the public hearing process, section 1. All comments by proponents, opponents, or other members of the public shall be made from the podium, attending in person or remotely. Any individuals making comments shall first give their name, and if they are resident of the city of Liberty Lake, will take the same note as above on that. It is expected that all speakers will deliver their comments in a courteous and efficient manner and will speak only on the subject under consideration. And this is the only time we restrict the topic, because it is public hearing on a specific topic. Okay, top of page, yes, go ahead, Amy.
Two things. Back at 7.2, it says adding a 3 minute limit. Comments, we didn't really.
Do you want that in your policy or not?
Well, it's already, it's in there. It says in the third line under 7.2, persons appearing before the council shall limit their comments to 3 minutes. Is there another, did you have a follow-up?
There's a yellow. I was just gonna say, staff suggestion add 3 minutes limit to citizen comments, so it's already in there.
Yes.
I'm gonna try that. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Garcia, did you have anything else?
No.
Okay, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
On the second sentence in 7.3.1, if attending in person or remotely, so it says they need to be made from the podium, or what if they're remotely?
What do we call that?
Or in the track, or,
By
but
zone,
the method isn't there, I guess, I'm saying, one thing for the remotely part.
or as recognized during Zoom. And we'll just use our
Yeah.
regular notations from Todd.
Yeah, well, I like Councilmember Lake, or is recognized by the meeting chair,
Host, whoever.
yeah. Yeah, I want to refrain from maybe putting Zoom in there in case we change technology.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
whatever platform, like.
Yep. Thank you for pointing that one out. Okay, back to page 10, section 2 at the top, no comments shall be made from any other location. So we struck the, anyone making out of order comments shall be subject to removal from meeting. That was, based on all of the plethora of meetings that we've all been to, I think, this year on meeting management and Robert's rules. As long as it's not a meeting disruption, they can say what they want, how they want. Then this just goes, I don't even know if we need the first sentence in number 2, We'll just leave it to, if you are disabled and require accommodation, please advise the chair. Or meeting host.
So the hearing process is all outlined in 7.3, except for the 3-minute continuation. I know it's been mentioned before, but not in this particular section. And the only reason I bring it up, Mayor,
Yeah.
is that it may behoove us at some point to be able to copy the public hearing process and have them available over by the pickup areas
Good point.
for people coming in so they know the process.
Yep.
Because some of this stuff so seldom gets used that I didn't even know about it.
Exactly.
You can't applaud, okay?
All right.
Anyway.
I'll make that note, and maybe, maybe when we're finished, if we can put together a summary of the public comments piece and the public hearing piece, like you said, and have it available, not just here, but on the website and, with any of the meeting notices, that would probably be good. Yes.
One of the ideas that I had was to have our agenda itself be a little bit more informational about the process piece. So like when we're talking about an ordinance or even public comments, like I have given, I looked up a few different agendas from different cities, and quite a few of them do have like citizen comments, and it talks about what exactly you do during that citizen comment phase with ordinances too. And if anybody's interested, I do have the link to, I think there's like 4 different cities that have more robust agendas. So I think there's a way for us to keep our rules and procedure in the same order, but beef up our agenda itself to be more informatory for, if that's a word, for the public, as to when they can speak and what they can speak about and when they should ask questions.
Yeah, I'd like to see those, if you can send them to, send them to everybody, as they review, and we can comment. Send any comments, remember, don't reply all, but send any comments to, Katie and Ann and I. That'd be great.
That was a Montana word.
Hmm?
No, just something on
Okay, all right, so, there were no other red lines for the rest of section 7, unless anybody has any additional notes that they made on these sections. Go ahead.
In regards to, in regards to item 5, it says council members shall not reply or respond in any way to testimony provided by speakers at the public hearing, except to request specific clarification.
Yes.
I think that lends itself to what Member Kurtz is saying. It illustrates at the very beginning that they are not ignoring you.
Mm-hmm.
Council is paying close attention. However, we will ask for a specification. So that goes to them, not just this one liner, but in the description that she puts out for people who don't speak.
Good idea. And again, something that I try to remember to mention at the beginning of public comments and things, but I know I'm maybe need to make a better script for that so it's consistent. But like Councilmember Kurt said, if there are some things that we can add to the agenda for more clarification, it may not need to be said all the time. So thank you for those points. So if there's nobody else with any comments on section 7, we'll move on to section 8, duties and privileges of citizens. So there's a lot of yellow here. So meeting participation, I'll just read it real fast. Citizens are welcome at all council meetings, of course, and are encouraged to attend and participate, of course. Recognition of the speaker by the chair is a prerequisite for an orderly and effective meeting. Yep. And it is expected that all speakers will deliver their comments in a courteous and efficient manner and will speak only to the subject under consideration, which is not the case, because we're not just on public hearing now, we are on public participation, period. And we'll speak only to the subject under consideration if it's a public hearing, something that's clarified only for public hearing, or just take that out. Okay. And again, we're getting into some of the rules on meetings. It's expected that speakers will deliver their comments in a courteous and efficient manner. There's no consequences listed here, so I think, and we'll clarify with Sean, I think we're okay still listing that. If not, we may need to change it to a non-disruptive manner, because I know if they are disrupting a meeting, there are things that we can do, but we will take a look at that to make sure. Citizen comments. Under agenda item citizen comments, citizens may address any item they wish to discuss with the mayor and council by completing and submitting the yellow request to speak form or a notification to the remote meeting host. I'll add that note there at the bottom of page 10. All right, page 11 at the top. Yes.
Thank you, 8.2.
Yes.
I've dropped this up a couple times, I don't see it's been added. Does the council not want to have in there that no election endorsements are allowed?
That's, we can't limit that, the free speech issue. It is,
We've not allowed that in the past.
nobody's been shut down for it. I know we've had some people who may not have been overtly campaigning for someone or themselves, but it has happened, but we can't shut it down, the free speech issue. I understand where you're coming from.
Maybe we can have, ask our attorney to revisit that, give us additional and further clarification.
Okay.
He's on.
Oh, Sean, sorry, I didn't realize you were on. Sean, the question is about, not allowing, political campaigning at citizen comments.
You mean
I don't
as
believe
far
we
as
can
a
take that
candidate,
off.
as far as a candidate campaigning or anybody?
Or anybody, I guess, speaking on behalf of a candidate, is that what your
Yeah, that's right.
point is? Yes,
That's what I'm hearing.
yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear specific. I heard you and someone else. I wasn't sure what it was you said.
John, what I was questioning was adding on to 8.2 that no election endorsements would be allowed. The mayor is saying that we can't do that because of free speech.
Yeah, Mike, I've got to look at that further. There is something recently with regard to that, and I need to see it specifically, so that we can potentially put some clarification language in there.
You'll visit that and get back to us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Yes, Councilor Langford.
Mr. Attorney,
Yes.
what is the same vein of thought with people walking in with campaign buttons, handing out a bumper sticker, bringing a sign inside the council during council meetings? Would you include that, please, in your lookup?
I will do that.
Thank you, sir.
Great. I can't see your hand over there. There you go. Councilor Garcia.
Just for a bit of clarification, citizens do not acquiesce, nor do they give up their sovereignty in order to speak, to public comment and to, in a courteous way, say whatever it is they want to say. And that would include, coming in and saying, I support Donald Duck, or they have a pen that says Donald Duck for, city clerk. Where the rub is that council members of the leadership, refrain from such comments, because it is the leadership that is held responsible for their actions, while a citizen is completely in their, what is in the legal authority of a citizen not to be shut down, regardless of what they say. And the attention that's paid to it is something that can be minimized by someone who said something, you've called a point of order, you've asked for them not to, you've mentioned it, that we would ask that you refrain from such support during our council meetings. So in a courteous way, you would ask them to refrain from such, but you cannot, I do not believe, nor do I believe it's legal, that you forbid them to make whatever comment. That someone says, gosh, they were supporting my opposition, or they were, unfortunately, that's just the way things work. That is just a suggestion, not for you to make sure it happens, but just a suggestion.
Great. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, where were we? Okay, so back to the top of page 11, continuing on section 8.2 on citizen comments. Citizen comments, they shall first obtain recognition by the chair, who shall then allow the comments subject to a 3-minute limitation per speaker. or other limitations as the chair or council may deem necessary. So that's where it brings in, if we have a whole lot of people, you guys can look at reducing the time as long as, or expanding the time as long as it's equal for everybody. The chair and council will receive comments without reply or discussion unless the chair or council requests clarification. Following such comments, if action is required or has been requested, the chair or council may place the matter on the current agenda or future agenda or refer the matter to staff for action or investigation and report at a future meeting. Further clarifications on that? I think it's pretty clear. All right, the second set that's not highlighted, just with red underline, is an addition. All written comments shall be submitted to and received by the clerk no later than 4 p.m. on the date of the city council meeting. Written comments received will be acknowledged during the meeting, and the clerk will provide written comments to the council in advance of the meeting. Any comments, questions, changes? Councilmember Follier.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess when I think about, being on the receiving end of an email that comes in at 3:59 on council day, maybe not all of us will have had the opportunity to review it before the council meeting. So how would that be disseminated?
I know, Katie, I know you and Ann were talking.
Email, but.
Yeah. I know Katie and Ann were having this discussion today, so I'm gonna go ahead and defer to Katie.
So what we will strive to do is give you a hard copy in the council chambers. If you're not here, we'll email it to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, our goal is to get it from a deliverer of the written comment into your hands. And we had to set a timeline, so we said 4 p.m. is the deadline. And our goal then would be to acknowledge it in the meeting, and we will make hard copies and distribute it to you.
Has it always been the day of the council meeting is the cutoff?
We've never really had a policy on written comments.
No, I thought we did.
Did we?
Yeah. It could have just been an unofficial policy, though.
When is the agenda prepared, Katie?
So it is prepared the Wednesday, so today's meeting, the agenda was set and due on Wednesday last week. And then we have Thursday to work out the details, and then it's distributed and posted on Friday. So if someone wants to come in person, they can. They can also attend by Zoom, and then they can also give us a written comment by 4 p.m. of the council day. That's the way it's written out, Councilman.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to also point out is that in addition to what Katie's saying, that normally Mayor Pro Tem, whoever's at that time, usually gets together with Katie on Friday, because sometimes there's some changes on there to the agenda, and those notes are made and decided upon, and that's how I come up with those suggestions. So we've got some time to think about it.
Yeah, so I'm in favor of the 4 o'clock on council day. It's just having it right here when we get here is great. Thank you.
Great. All right, so moving on to section 8.3, subjects on the current agenda. Pursuant and subject to section 8.2, any member of the public who wishes to address the council on an item on the current agenda shall make such request to the chair by completing and submitting a request to speak form or notification to the meeting host, remote meeting host. Speaker shall identify whether they are a resident of the city of Liberty Lake. We'll take the same note there as previous.
Proper.
Yes. Okay, no more changes on 8.3. We'll look at 8.4. It's a simple change here to manner of addressing the council. All remarks shall be addressed to the chair and not to any individual member. No questions shall be asked of the council members. And that's this is a point of clarification that when we go back to our council and mayor handbooks, that's a suggestion that they get addressed to the chair, and that way nobody feels kind of singled out on a comment. Section 8.5, written communications. Interested parties or their authorized representatives may address the council by written communication in regard to any general matter concerning the city. But written communication may be submitted by direct mail, email, or by addressing the communication to the city clerk, who will distribute copies to the council members. Communication will be entered into the record if requested by the party. And we have that. I don't know, that we may be able to, combine a couple of these, because it seems a little bit repetitive. So we'll take a look at that for the 99.5% final copy we're gonna have next time. Okay, written communications, I already did that. 8.6, again, this is, a legal review. Sean, we'll need to get back with you on this with regards to out-of-order comments, because the bottom line that I know that I've taken away from all these, different meetings over the last, several months that we've all been going through, about out-of-order comments, we can only, we cannot remove from the chambers unless the person's being disruptive. So we'll double check on the exact wording for that. Councilmember Langford.
Back to 8.5, the last, sentence. Regarding, being put onto the record if requested by the party. It's my feeling at this time that, you know, people don't know that they have to request it. That's why
They should all just
right.
be part of the
So
record.
it should be just included.
Yep, so the communication will be entered into the record, period.
Right.
How's that?
Mhm.
Makes it easy. All right.
What does that mean, entered into the record?
Recorded during the open agenda meeting.
Do we just say that we received a letter from so-and-so?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we make it available.
Perfect.
All right, moving on to section 9, filling council vacancies and selecting mayor pro tem. 9.1, notice of vacancy if a council vacancy occurs. I'll just skip the RCW part. In order to fill the vacancy with the most qualified person available until the next available general election is held. The council will distribute and publish a notice of the vacancy, the procedure and deadline for applying for the position. So I know, Katie, you were able to clarify with Vicki Dalton 2 weeks ago at our last regular meeting that the elections for council and mayor are held in odd years and they take office in even years. So is there anything we need to do to clarify that because it's already stated somewhere else, or should we make it more clear here? What do you guys think?
Suggestion, if
Go
I
ahead.
can, since Katie and I went back and forth on this topic a
Go
little
ahead.
bit. Maybe something as simple as, changing it to the next regularly scheduled general election. Because then it goes, you can go back to, like you did, to, Vicki and get clarification on when are locals on the ballot, when are that.
I'll work with Sean and we'll come up with
Something.
language.
Okay.
Yeah, it is confusing. There is a general election every single November. The general election for nonpartisan municipal candidates is like, the mayor said, in the odd years to take office in the even year. So we'll try to work on, we know your intent
Yeah.
is to follow the law.
Yeah.
So we'll, reflect that.
Yep. And if there's something we can refer to, just like it's the RCW for the procedures for the vacancy, if we can refer back to something, that's always helpful. All right, 9.2, application procedure. There were no changes there. Any comments before I go on to the next one on 9.2? Okay. 9.3, interview process. No changes there except to add, depending on the number of applicants, council may undertake more than one round of interviews. Any changes, additions, comments on 9.3? Okay, 9.4, no changes there. Anything that we've missed? 9.5, duties of mayor pro tem. In the temporary absence of the mayor pro tem shall perform the duties and responsibilities of the mayor with regard to the conduct of meetings and business of the city. And I believe Mayor Pro Tem, you opted to not put the additional information in here, is that what I understand?
Yeah,
Okay.
Councilman Kurtz and I visited about that. We feel that, there's other areas that we can address those,
Okay,
other responsibilities.
got it. Okay, so we'll just end it right before the highlighted area, 9.5. 9.6, selection of Mayor Pro Tem nominations. We'll skip down to the second paragraph. Each council member shall be given the opportunity to submit a nomination for Mayor Pro Tem. After all nominations are made, the mayor will call for a vote on the nominations in the order they were made. Voting will be either by voice or a recorded vote as determined by the mayor. Do we want to make, okay, never mind, I'm gonna retract what I was getting ready to say. As soon as one nominee receives a majority vote of 4 votes of the council, that council member will be declared the Mayor Pro Tem. No votes will be taken on the remaining nominees. So Sean, we have a note here for you as well with regards to legal review. with regards to what if all council members are not in attendance, and is 4 still considered the majority? Say we have 5, the majority would be 3 based on the attendees.
Are you talking just as far as a quorum, or if you were to take action?
The action, because the note here says, so we're 9.6, second paragraph, says as soon as one nominee receives a majority vote of 4 votes of the council. That, to me, that assumes all 7 are here, but, well, or 6, because we'd be down a member at that point. Oh, no, I'm sorry, we're on Mayor Pro Tem, not Vacancy, sorry. So
You're
say
right.
we don't have 7 here, is 4 still the number we need to hit, if the whole council's not here?
I think the way the language is reading, my read of it would be a majority vote of 4 votes of the council, which would be the intent of 7, so majority would be 4 of 7. If you want something different, we could certainly do that and just say a majority vote of attending council members or something like that.
Yes, that's kind of where I was going with that, but I didn't know if there was some sort of legal background to needing 4.
Mayor,
Yes.
before you start making notes.
Oh, sure, go ahead, Councilman Sawyer.
So in that scenario, then, if there's 6 council members here, it's a tie, the mayor selects. I don't like that idea. I would rather just hear from all 7 council members, and if there's a meeting where not all 7 of us are here, then you postpone the decision to the next meeting. Go 4 out of 7. I mean, it's an important position, I think, and I think all of the council should be heard.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
We actually experienced that the last time. We had the election of Mayor Pro Tem. The mayor at the time, Mayor Rickner, it was a tie vote. He had the tie vote, and what he chose to do is not make a vote and recommend that it wait till the next meeting when the majority or all the council members are there. If I'm not mistaken, I think the next meeting, I can't remember if we had all 7 there or not. We might have.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so do we want to, okay, as soon as one nominee receives,
But I'm just one of 7. I'm
Yeah.
just throwing that out there.
right.
I agree with it.
Mayor Pro
I
Tem?
agree with it too. I mean, I think that, I think the intent is for the whole council to be there to have a good representation of all of us. I just, maybe it doesn't happen, but what if we have vacancies? Then does it hamstring us from selecting Mayor Pro Tem because we don't have 7? So I think just, making sure that language doesn't hinder us from doing that, so like the full,
And anything else. And anything else. Any other matter that comes can't be governed by that.
Right. You look like you're thinking hard.
No, I'm agreeing with the considerations, that it makes sense, as the member Foyer, alluded to and said, and member Kurtz agreed. The position is too important, it holds a lot of weight, there's a lot of responsibility. And so in the goodwill and sense of what the citizens want and what they need is to ensure that the way we select, those offices in particular, when there's a vacancy, means that we have everyone on board. In my estimation, I would agree with him.
Okay, so we'll try to come up with some language around, there will only be a vote for Mayor Pro Tem if all 7 council members can be present. If not, it'll be postponed. Does that work for everybody? We'll get the right language around that. Mayor Pro Tem, and then Councilmember First.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, because the last time when we postponed it for another 2 weeks, the Mayor Pro Tem at the time, would have been Mayor Rickner, we just carried it over. So it wasn't a critical thing. So I really am in favor of having all 7 there. The thing that stuck out to me in this paragraph is that I don't have a challenge with 4, whoever gets the first 4. But because this is a recorded vote that Ann Swenson records and it becomes part of the record, that when it says no votes will be taken on the remaining nominee, so therefore the remaining council has not had the opportunity to vote on who they choose. So therefore, if they can't vote, it doesn't become part of the record. So just for a clarification, I would like to throw this out for council's consideration, is that the person who gets 4 gets a position. If that happens to be the first person who was up there, then we should also, if there's 3 other council members who haven't voted, they should have the right to vote on who they wanted to. So therefore, once they vote, that becomes a public record.
Any other?
Concur.
Good to me.
Okay. So that is also how the council vacancy is written, or would you like to propose we do the same for both?
Yes, same for that.
The difference is that when you do a council vacancy, there's only 6 council members. So ties happen.
Yeah, I know.
So even if you're all in attendance, you can still have a tie.
True. Okay. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
The point being is that everybody has a vote, and they need to vote on everything. Now, it's that something, there's a conflict. My point always is that they should have the vote, it should be recorded.
We'll see what we can come up with on that. I mean, I understand your intent to make sure everybody is on record of.
How they vote.
Exactly.
I think it's real simple.
Yeah.
Their solution is very simple.
And I think that this is an assumption that the first person that was nominated would get those first 4 votes. We could have a vote too where the first person got 2 votes and it was the second, everybody would still get a chance to vote. And my only hang up still is just making sure that we don't box ourselves into not being able to ever select a mayor pro tem because we don't have the full council. I don't know, if there's, and maybe it wouldn't matter, I think it's taken us less than a month to fill vacancies. So I guess not having a mayor pro tem, is there any issue with that for a month potentially, if that's my only question?
Not, okay, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I think what would happen is that at the end of this term that I happen to be on, if for some reason it doesn't happen right away and it's postponed for a couple of weeks, whoever's the mayor pro tem just carries over until that position is filled again.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's happened at least
It has,
more
yeah.
than 1 or 2
It has.
times.
Unless
Yeah,
they didn't win their election.
true,
They didn't win their election.
very true.
There's always that possibility.
Yeah, okay, we'll take a look at that language, guys. Okay, 9.7, no edits there that I know of about removal of mayor pro tem. Okay, section 10, preparation of agenda. 10.1, 10.2, no edits there unless somebody has some new ones. And I see the end in sight. 10.3, timing of preparing. The agenda will be put in final form by 1 p.m. Friday, prior to the following Tuesday evening council meeting. Agendas will be distributed to the city council and city staff by 5 p.m. Friday. Agenda materials will be available on the city's website for the media and public on the Friday before the regular meeting. Nothing contained herein shall prevent the mayor, council members, or the city administrator from adding a matter to the agenda prior to the city council approval of the agenda according to section 4. And this is just for regular meetings, correct? Because if we have a special meeting, we're not allowed to, there's no changes to the agenda, but that's at the meeting.
That is how it's written.
Yeah.
If you want to change it, you can.
Okay.
I'm back to 10.1.
Sure. Go ahead.
The city clerk doesn't make the agenda in our situation, does she? She may print it, but she doesn't make it.
She manages it.
Yeah. You're talking content?
She manages it.
You're talking content of the
Yeah.
agenda. So generally, that's not addressed in here, so that's a good question. Generally, we put the city's business on there, whether it's a contract or it's a budget, something, or a proclamation or whatever. But certainly, we've recently been receiving requests from council members to add things to the agenda, so we work to accommodate that as well. So it's really managed by the business of the city. Content-wise, did I describe that accurately? So we don't, we always want council to know what's on the agenda, so you could say, no, I don't want that, or yes, I just want this instead. That's why we go over the agenda very briefly at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, I guess the question is, what's the definition of prepare versus, versus?
He manages the process, the distribution of documents, the contracts,
Everything but content.
everything, except for content.
Thank you.
All right. So there are no changes to 10.3. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilmember Garcia.
Excuse me, thank you, Madam Mayor. In reference to 10.3, it talks about the agenda, the distribution of the agenda, the time of the agenda, the materials in the agenda. I would like to suggest a recommendation that the agenda in its entirety, including public comment that is made in writing, that is not read into the record, be made as a, reading document that is here at City Hall, perhaps at the reception area, for those individuals who do not have access to internet, don't have a laptop, don't have email on their phones, can't access it. We've now made it a possibility that people can come in during the day, perhaps a week before the meeting, and review it, sign it out, stay here, review it, as well as have that same document or two binders here in City Hall once we populate with the constituency who can come back in. The reason that I would make that suggestion, it's nowhere in here, is because people sit in the audience, as I have done many times during public comments, and we're listening to everyone speak. We're really not up to speed on what is in this packet, what are they talking about, what do we see? So part and parcel of our responsibility to the public would be to make that available. Should they not want to use it and exercise their right to hold that agenda and look at it, then that's fine too. But it becomes a part of our normal procedure to invite people to learn a little bit more before they get here. I would like to recommend that we consider having that available.
I know you're about to make a comment.
Yeah, so we're out in the foyer, and I'll be honest, I need to look at it. I walk by it every day, but I don't always read its content. We post all of our legal notices. It would be very simple by 5 p.m. on Friday for us to take the agenda and put it in the legal notice, because it's available 24/7.
Beautiful, that's what I.
But not just the agenda, the packet.
That's gonna be,
Yeah, because the
A
agenda,
little
we
more
always have,
challenging.
and we always have the agenda here on the table as people come in, but that doesn't give you the background.
Well, the packet, we should not, my recommendation is that, let's not consider how many pages we have to cover in that packet. Let's consider what it does, what its intention is to bring people fully up to speed on what we have when they sit down. So if it meant that somebody volunteered to be the one that made the copies, printed out an additional copy of
I'm
it.
just saying, if the packet, 50 pages, it would be hard for us to post it. What we could do is.
No, just don't post it,
Yeah.
it goes in a binder.
Yeah.
It's a simple binder.
Yeah.
And then the binder goes on a table.
They come to the office.
And they come to the office and they check it out. So you know who's seen it, you know who's checked it out, you're fully aware that it's being utilized, and it would include those comments made in writing by individuals, so that one does not have to request a public record if they don't want to. They can read it,
And whatever those written comments are that we have by that time.
in real time. Yeah. Just a suggestion.
Could we also just kind of have it maybe for, put the next one on top of it, and just, if you want to read back through the past agendas, you can, but like a current one, and then like the historical to just behind it? Like the binder
Yeah,
gets bigger
right.
throughout the year, essentially?
We could, because I know how much room they take up in my drawer, so maybe one smaller binder per month, so we can split it up. So if somebody wants to check out a binder for June, they can have that, and they won't have to get the whole thing.
So, just so I understand, so the agenda can be going in our legal notice space, and then a binder, like I have, fully populated, could be on the front desk. And if someone could sit in the foyer and read it, or they could check it out.
Well, they cannot leave the premises with it, but they can check it out to read in the foyer or a reading spot.
That would be Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, so.
Any comments,
No,
questions on that?
sure.
Go ahead,
I'll
Councilmember
jump in.
Porter.
Just a couple thoughts. Throughout our document, we say if you need special help with getting to the council chambers or parking or whatever it is, maybe we can include that. If you need a printed copy of our 130-page long document, then call us and we'll provide it at the door. Two, it's gonna be a while, I have a suspicion, before we are allowed to have our citizens back. Does anybody know anything about that? So the intent is for somebody to come here during a council meeting day or anytime.
Any time while the office is open.
Thank you.
All right, we'll put something about that together. All right, and then we have suspension and amendment of the rules with no note. And so that is the end of our document. It didn't go as fast as I had hoped, so it's 10 till 7. So what do we want to do with regards to the city council priorities? I know Councilmember Kurtz, you had mentioned maybe setting a special meeting, even if it's a, hour and a half or 2 hours to go over that out.
Yeah, I also want to make sure I understand, like, the process is when I'm supposed to, when we'll get the, revisions with Sean's input as well, when we'll get the final thing, and then how do we get if we have the additional comments back to you guys, and what's the timeline for that, because I don't want to miss it.
Right. So let Katie and I, follow up with Ann and Sean and find out how soon we can get that next revision. And I think the best thing to do is provide the red lines, and then also provide what that final document looks like next to it. We always have like the marked up one, and then what we think the final one's going to be, and we'll make sure we put dates on them. And then, we'll give you a timeline as to when we want them back. Mayor Pro Tem, you had your hand up.
I believe we jumped on the two different subjects. Weren't we talking about council priorities?
Well, it sounded like Andy was going to jump before we finished.
Felt like tying that as far as
Okay.
timeline for that. But as far as the council priorities, I was thinking that I feel like we continue to like touch on this very briefly, but like there's a big iceberg below that I'd really like to spend some concentrated time on it. And we do have full, I think, workshops during our regular meeting, and so I would suggest maybe that we look at a special meeting that's like a 2-hour meeting for us to kind of really dive into the details and really do some concentrated work on it.
I'll let the council weigh in. I personally like the idea because I think we're sending a message that, we want to work on city council priorities, but it's not a priority because we keep pushing it down the road. So we're kind of in a finger pointing situation. I'd like to hear from the rest of the council with regards to a special meeting on the topic. Councilmember Langford.
Yeah. On the surface, great idea, but I think timing would be most important because we can't talk about, we can't talk efficiently about council priorities in July when we start working on a budget in August? Okay? So those two documents, need to go hand in hand. So having, workshop early about it, it's good exercise. But is it something we want to go through before we know what we're dealing with the budget?
But shouldn't I kind of think it's the other way around, that the priorities would drive the budget more than the other way around.
Well, it becomes a play on words, but the idea is we can plan all day, but if we don't have the budget for it, we just wasted a lot of time. We already got a lot in the pipes, that hasn't been paid for yet. So just to say we're going to drive the budget by what we want, by our priority, is really not that astute at this time.
But, and I think the priorities include much more than the dollar piece, but, go ahead, Mayor Tim.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I concur with what Councilman Langford is saying. In addition to that, we need to also identify critical part of staff being able to fill out and carry out our priorities. Because I think it's very poorly planned for us if we don't have staff realizing what they're going to put forward on some of these things. Like, I look at this American Rescue Plan, and that is going to be very involved. I think that could be very involved. So I think it's important we address our council priorities. I agree that it has a lot to do with funding, budget, but also equally, I believe it has a tremendous amount to do with staff being able to fulfill these projects.
Go ahead, Mayor. Councilmember Kurtz. Right, Jeff.
For me, I think the chicken or the egg, and I feel like the priorities, from my perspective, would come first, because I think that if we figure out what the priorities are and what the staff time is going to look like, we then also might launch into additional budget priorities for staff. But I think, to Councilman Langford's point, I think they are interconnected. I mean, I think, so I do hear what you said too, also that it needs to be timely, like we can't push that down the road. So I think I mostly just really want to talk about our priorities, and I know we need to talk about the budget, and maybe it makes sense to do all those things together.
Just one more note, please, is that, while you were speaking, something else came to my mind, is that I think it would be appropriate to set special meetings for the priorities which are already budgeted, such as the American Dream Act. Okay, we could meet specifically about that. Okay, it's already a priority, okay? But yet we don't know how we all feel about it, all right? We can meet about the bridge, okay? It's already a priority, it's already working. How's it going? Are we on target? Do we have enough money? Are we gonna have enough money, okay? And that to me becomes inclusive of being both budget-minded and priority. I don't see us coming up with priority over either one of those at this point, unless you have something that you were thinking about. That was a big budget item, or, you know, something that you thought would take preeminence over these.
No, I mean, I think the matrix that we've built out in the past, we just kind of want to know kind of where we're at with those, if we funded those or not, because I think we all agreed on those, so I don't think I've got any new ideas.
No, if you want to just go over those, yeah, that makes good sense.
Councilmember Follier?
Thank you, Mayor. For me, I hear two different things, priorities and capital facilities projects. So for me, I'm looking at this little slate in front of me here tonight when I got here. I'm looking at the American Rescue Plan, Safe, Active, Engaged Community, IT, and then our facilities and infrastructure, the big ticket, the big items that we're working on right now. Trailhead, some shelving at the library, Kramer Parkway overpass. I would include the Public Works Yard. Road improvements and maintenance should always be a priority. And any existing structures such as City Hall needs some love at some point in time. So those to me are priorities. Those are big items. And then this capital facilities plan that you're referring to, I think zeroes in on which part of these big items do we want to tackle and when. So to me, unless there's something that we want to add to this priorities list, we already got one, I feel like, but maybe there's something, I mean, for me anyway, but maybe somebody else has something they want to add.
Well, we just haven't talked about it, so
I know, for me, I kind of see it as a filter. You start with your priorities. You got your strategy, which drives your priorities, and then the priorities drive the policy, and then the budget. To me, it's filtering it down. That's just my vision of how it's working. So I don't want us to take things in the opposite order either. So we're left, because if we don't have, we already have the strategic plan, worked very hard on that a couple years ago, probably in need of an update. I realized I look really funny with my arms disappearing with my background there. And then set the priorities to support the strategic plan, and then that lets the staff know what to spend their time on. Go ahead, Katie. Yeah. Oh, we have 2 minutes. Oh, sorry. Yep, go ahead.
And then I do have a request. We're gonna try to put the finishing touches on all the feedback that we received tonight. I have a special ask of the council, could you by 5 p.m. Friday get it to Ann and myself, any edits that you have from what we covered? Then we can make those changes, work with Sean, and try to get a finished product out, next week, towards the end of next week.
Okay.
I don't think there's that much more we should do that.
Well, let's hop back. We've got about a minute and a half. Let's take a quick break. We can take a look back at the future workshops when we get to that in the agenda. I will put everybody on mute for just a moment. Okay, all right, welcome back, everybody. Quick break, we're still waiting for a couple of people to come back in, so bear with us. So while we're waiting to start, I will remind everybody, as I will again in a little bit, if you do have a citizen comment, please send a note to Todd Henderson in the chat, and he will get my attention, let me know that there's a citizen comment waiting. So we're waiting on 2 more to come back in, and we will get started. We'll call now, we wouldn't have a quorum. Meeting adjourned.
Did you see the chat?
I don't have one.
Tom's probably will not.
Oh, I don't have that. Okay. Gentlemen, get your videos started back up if you're not already. We are going to go ahead and welcome everybody to our regular city council meeting. This is Tuesday, July 20th, 2021. We are holding the council members in attendance tonight are here in the chambers with me, along with a couple members of our staff. And thank you for joining us remotely. Citizens, we are still working on the logistics of hybrid meetings, and hopefully soon we'll be able to have some of the citizens back here in the council chambers with us. But for now, pursuant to Governor Inslee's Order 20-25-12, issued January 11th, 2021, local governments must allow people to attend public meetings remotely, provided, however, the proclamation further allows in-person meetings under limited conditions in addition to remote public meetings. At the present time, due to the conditions required to hold in-person meetings, the City of Liberty Lake will continue to hold all public meetings remotely. So we will go ahead and start with our invocation. Councilmember Garcia.
As today brings us closer to a new normal, we ask that in lieu of all religions in our city that celebrate a higher power, that will come together so that we, at the end of all of this, the pandemic, the economic downturn, that we all come out whole and we celebrate each other and our journey together. I ask this in a moment of silence. Amen.
Thank you. Now if you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll call the meeting to order and start with our roll call. Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy.
Present.
Councilmember Kurtz. Councilmember Garcia.
Present.
Councilmember Follier. Councilmember Langford.
Present.
And I understand Councilmembers Severs and Dunn are out for family. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have a motion to excuse?
I do, Madam Mayor, thank you. I make a motion we excuse Councilman Dunn and Severs for tonight's meeting.
Second.
So moved and seconded by Councilmember Langford. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor of excusing Councilmembers Dunn and Severs, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, they are excused. All right, we are moving on to agenda approval. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Recommendation to council, make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented to us tonight with no additions, subtractions, or changes.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded by Councilmember Langford. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the agenda is approved as printed. Okay, citizen comments. I know I have one coming up. Just a reminder, like I said right before we convene the meeting, if you do have a citizen comment, please send a note to Todd Henderson in the chat. Let him know your name and if you are a resident of the City of Liberty Lake proper or not, and we will go ahead and then take your comment. You can speak on anything. No, the council will not be answering questions, but you may ask a clarifying question. You'll have 3 minutes, and Todd will put that on the screen. So I believe we have Gretchen and I apologize, I might butcher your last name, Steinheiser?
Yeah, you got it right. Thank you. My name is Gretchen, and I've been a resident of Liberty Lake in the Rocky Hill neighborhood for 4 years. And I wanted to just comment on the placement of the Liberty Lake Together sculpture. I found out about it at the end of June from reading this flash, and I'm hoping that we can reconsider the location of that sculpture. I really appreciate that we are increasing art in our community, and I'm great that we have an art commission, and I appreciate all the time that they spend in making these decisions. I do, however, feel like there needs to be more outreach for public input because it's a permanent change to the park that can't be changed once it's put there. And just like when buildings are put up in our communities, there's a public notice that's put up before so that people have a chance to make comments or just put their input in it. And so I was hoping that we could have a little period of time where we just have more community input for that. Some of the ideas I had was putting a notice in the park boxes that are there for information. I think that's a good place to gather to let people know of the specific changes that are happening in the park. Also, maybe posting the decisions of new changes to the parks on the Facebook page for the city. I was looking through the minutes. I haven't been able to attend an Arts Commission meeting, but I was able to go through the minutes and see that this has been something that has been in the works for a while, but haven't been able to see any minutes that talk about the specific location. So I feel like there's people that aren't aware that it's actually being put into Rocky Hill Park. And when I've talked to my neighbors about it, even people that just live across the street from the park, they're like, I had no clue that there's a sculpture being placed there. But the one reason why I was wanting to consider the location is that I feel like Rocky Hill Park was built around the natural setting of it, and also that barn, like purposefully nothing was built in front of that barn, and also the like natural rocks and the trees that are there. And I feel like if we put the sculpture right in front of the barn in that specific area, it's a beautiful sculpture, but it's taking away from the beauty that's already there. Like it's gonna block the barn. I feel like the barn is a symbol of the history of that area. And I think that there could be wonderful places where that sculpture could also be placed and appreciated by the people of Liberty Lake. But I'm just hoping that we can have a period of time where we can get more input from the community. Thank you.
Great. We appreciate your comment, and I believe we do have some Parks and Arts members on tonight. If not, we will make sure they get your input as well. We appreciate you being here. Hey, we have Steve Peterson has a comment as well. You're up, Mr. Peterson.
Peterson, City of Liberty Lake, and I'd like to welcome our newest council member, DG. Thanks for stepping up. My comment is in regards to the ARP funds and their use. I've gone over the act and know that much needed guidance still needs to come down from the federal government. That being said, the city has received the first portion of the ARP money in June. The act specifically calls out support for nonprofit entities that were impacted in the 2020 around COVID. I believe that at this point in time, a budget line item should be established by council to begin distributing those funds. I project the line item should be around 10% of the dollars received, 150,000. While not limiting the beneficiaries of those funds, we should ask our local service organizations, the Hub, Kiwanis, Rotary, Lions Club, Friends of the Library, Winterglow, to detail their amounts that will heal the wounds in their organization finances, which were attributed to COVID. By creating a dollar line item, an avenue to request funds, and sending the checks as soon as possible makes those funds available immediately and effective in our community. Additionally, a budgeted line item can be augmented in 2022 at the city's next distribution. As for the balance of the funds available now and in the future, we should have a robust discussion with the public and how they will best serve our city in the near and more important long-term future. I have a plan I will be sharing with you and the public as we navigate those ideas and discussions going forward. But for now, thank you in advance for taking care of our service clubs and nonprofit entities. Thank you.
Todd, is there anybody else with another citizen comment? All right, thank you. We will close citizen comments. There will be another opportunity at the end of the meeting. Okay, we are on to announcements, proclamations, special presentations, which we have none. So we are on to city council reports. Does anybody on the council have anything to share over the last couple of weeks? Councilmember Follier.
Thank you. As maybe everybody remembers, maybe not everybody remembers, but I was volunteered to be on our Trailhead Improvement Committee.
We call that voluntold.
That's right.
Did you hear a train whistle?
The other three members are Katie, Lisa, and Chris, our golf pro. So last Tuesday afternoon, we interviewed three companies to provide a service to the city for the project and construction management of how best to move forward and complete the project. Each interview lasted about 45 minutes. We asked the same questions of all three. The committee at the end of it all was pretty unanimous on who was the best fit, and that was OAC Services. OAC has a high level of interest and excitement for the project, and they offered some personal attachments to the history of the Trailhead from their staff, which was pretty cool to hear. They made it noticeably clear on how they would approach the project and with our best interest in the forefront. We discussed budgets, timeframes, and expectations from both sides. Their support staff is extremely knowledgeable and did not hesitate to jump into the discussion with suggestions. Overall, a great exchange and a professional understanding of the process start to finish. We are currently awaiting proposals from OAC for our next meeting, which is, I'm sure, within the next 5 days. August when?
August 3rd,
August 3rd.
our goal is to bring a contract back to the council.
August 3rd, thank you. Given the process for the approval through the state, sounds like they don't meet on a regular basis for these types of projects. I believe time is of the essence with this part of the project, and the committee will be looking forward to council review and hopefully approval at our, what council meeting? August 3rd. And it says check with Katie if I'm not correct, so thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Follier. Any other council reports, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you,
That's
Madam
a hard
Mayor.
act to follow there.
It's a very difficult act to follow, because I'm sure you heard that lonesome whistle coming down the train. After the state, would you like to volunteer? Of course. Thank you, Madam Mayor. This last week, I had the opportunity to meet with Spokane Valley Chamber of Commerce, reviewing their new facilities. I believe the mayor met with them on Friday. And we spent quite a bit of time talking about the American Rescue Plan and how they addressed funds that they were given or the ones that they were involved with. And what's interesting is that what comes out of it is still the unknown, that I think we're very comfortable in moving forward in helping our 501c3s, a lot of the organizations we have locally, be able to do something with them because we are familiar with them. And the benefit is for the local organizations, practically every one of them, the funds that they raise comes right back into the community. So I think those are pretty easy. But the thing that's most interesting is that the unknown, because one of the things that came up, and I know the mayor has been at some of these meetings I've been over the last couple of years, or even AWC has talked about this quite a bit. And the unknown is that we think we can use it for certain things, we're pretty sure we can use it for certain things, but we're not sure we can use it for certain things. And the big question comes up, how does the auditors look at the city when this comes up? And through AWC, they've been saying, oh, don't worry, it'll be okay. I wouldn't worry. Let's make sure that we're doing this right, because this $3 million gift that we've been given is a gift to the citizens of Liberty Lake. This is Liberty Lake citizens, 11,050 some odd people. This is their money. So how we treat this is very, very important. The things that we can invest in are things that later on, like infrastructure, some of the things we've talked about, the benefit's going to be is that we will not have to go back to our citizens later on if we can pay for, use some of these funds for those things now. We say, you know, we have to go back and redo these things and so it takes your taxes. So it was very advantageous meeting with them. That was it.
Okay. Any other council reports? I'm not hearing any. I guess it's up to me. All right, so a few things, and I'd like to thank Mr. Peterson for introducing the ARP topic for the council members in chambers. When you came in, you had a draft letter and form that will be going out to our nonprofits to gather information on what they believe their need is to fulfill last year and part of this year. We're also looking for ideas from the public on nonprofits that may do work here in Liberty Lake that we may not necessarily be familiar with. For example, you know, like Mr. Peterson said, we have the Hub, we have Kiwanis, we have Rotary of Lions, we've got Winter Glow, we've got those that we know of on a regular basis. But I was talking with one of our residents just in the last week or two, Meals on Wheels. You know, they had to cancel their Silver Cafe during COVID, obviously for obvious reasons. They're working on getting it back up and running. They're not based in Liberty Lake, but they serve Liberty Lake. So we're also trying to gather that information. So love to hear, you know, I know Councilmember Kurtz, you probably have a couple, you know, based on your experience that we can probably engage as well. So if you guys can, you know, in the public, if you guys are listening, you know, send in the names of those nonprofits that we may not fully be aware of that are actually doing work here in Liberty Lake. That would be fantastic. We want to engage as many as we can. We set a tentative due date on the form to come back from the nonprofits, I think the 20th of August. That's not a, you know, there's flexibility. We want to help, but we also have time on this. I think, you know, as we've discussed in previous meetings, the nonprofits are, you know, the low-hanging fruit that we can help, I think, the quickest. And, you know, to Mayor Pro Tem's point, it's the unknowns. I was at Mayor Nadine Woodward's press conference yesterday when she was talking about the ARP funds and how, you know, we still don't have final guidance. And they're actually hiring a couple people to help navigate their citizen engagement. And what I've been seeing on social media is that people don't necessarily understand even what we know now. So we've heard a lot about the community pool. Well, there's a lot of ideas out there that we're pretty sure right now that probably won't qualify. So when I was at the regional mayor's meeting last week, it was a really good discussion on this with regards to maybe doing, you know, back to the community engagement with Councilmember Kurtz, maybe doing a ARP roadshow or town hall or something, a special meeting, you know, even if we do it at Pavilion Park and talk to people about what we know so far it can be used for and what we know that it can't, so that we can start setting those expectations and then continuing to get that citizen engagement. So just a reminder, we have till 2014. Gosh, I did it again, 2024. I guess I just want to be younger than I am. The end of 2024 to allocate the funds, and the end of 2026 to spend them. So I'm going to make sure we're pushing on that gas pedal and with the proper pressure. A couple more highlights. Katie and I went to a great meeting with the Association of Washington Businesses. It was their regional transportation meeting. The low carbon fuel and the cap and trade items that came out of the legislature earlier this year, just going to kill us on gas prices, with none of that going to the transportation budget. Really eye-opening, just because of, you know, costs will be going up for the refineries, and, you know, the money made off of cap and trade is not going into the transportation budget. And on top of that, at the federal level, there are discussions about a federal gas package that will also increase our cost at the pump. So kind of scary stuff to keep an eye on. SRTC board meeting. The legislature is talking about a special session in the fall, probably November. Liberty Lake has 5 projects on that special legislative session list. I've shared that list with the council. That includes Creamer Parkway, overlay, that's between Sprague and Country Vista, Mission Country Vista to Moultrie, grind and overlay, Appleway, Fairway to East City Limits, grind and overlay, Country Vista, Liberty Lake Road to the western city limits, grind and overlay, and Sprague, Liberty Lake Road to Gage, grind and overlay. So several maintenance projects, rebuilding projects that are desperately needed. They're already in our capital facilities plan. Let's see if there's anything else. Phil already touched on the Trailhead project management interviews. I was able to sit in on those, really well-qualified companies. And, but, you know, it was great that one stood out for all of us, and we, you know, it was a consensus on the choice. GSI Business Leaders Meeting, some more things to keep in mind when we are talking about the American Rescue Plan dollars. You know, we've talked before about not overlapping what other agencies are able to provide in order to get the best use of the dollars. There are some federal investments coming down the pipe that are still being discussed at the federal level. Innovation and Competition Act, $250 billion. The American Jobs Plan, $1 to $2 trillion, and the American Families Plan, $1.8 trillion. So we need to, we're keeping a close eye on those actions through GSI and through the Greater Spokane Valley Chamber as well, to see, just kind of keep a pulse on those. And other than that, I will leave the library trustees to Jandy. And last but not least, there's a conference the first week in August, the Washington Economic Development Association. I'll be attending that for 2.5 days. I may be late to the August 3rd workshop, but I will definitely be back for the regular meeting. So looking forward to that. It's the first conference I'll be attending with this group, so looking forward to their suggestions on economic recovery after the pandemic. I think that's plenty. Parks and Arts Commission, I didn't know if, oh, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor.
That'll work.
I failed to mention this, one point that Spokane Valley Chamber pointed out, and because we were talking about the American Rescue Plan, I'm looking at this application we're sending out, and one thing that they recommended that they found very advantageous, when we're asking individuals to apply, also ask them, have they applied for anything anywhere else, and have they received funds there? I think with nonprofits that we have in our area, probably none of them fall into that category, maybe one or two. But that was very important, because what they said was that when they first started talking to individuals, they had a huge amount of individuals requesting funds, but the more they started talking to them, they found out that some of these have applied and received 2 and 3 different funds, and financially, some of them are amazingly better off in 2020 than they were in 2019. So I think that's very important. We be very diligent with our citizens' money.
Yep. Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed. Okay, do we have anybody from Parks and Arts?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Jen texted me, let me know that she didn't think Linda was going to
Okay.
be on tonight, so.
I didn't know if, I saw Mr. Sahlberg. At one point, I didn't know if he wanted to step in or not. If you do, Tom, go ahead and let Todd know. So we will go ahead and move into city administrator reports. Katie.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, good evening. I always start with the matrix because it's a very fluid document, and so let me make sure I understand. Right now on the matrix, it says August 3rd is going to be a financial workshop on investment policies, and Hugh brought this up many months ago, and he's going to be having the meeting time with Kyle Dixon, I think tomorrow. Anyway, long story short, do you want a special meeting on priorities to be scheduled in an off Tuesday for an hour or two? That's the question. I'm looking for clarity. Or do you want to take our 6 p.m. workshop time and do council priorities on August 3rd?
And then move Hugh to
And
7.
move the financial investment discussion to another time.
I like that.
Option B for me, please.
Okay, sounds like special meeting, Mayor Pro Tem, but I'm kind of looking at hands here.
I'm sorry, is it consensus so far?
So
Special
far,
meeting?
so far.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, no, well, consensus on putting it at 6 and moving Hugh to 7 is what I heard.
No.
Oh, wait, okay, so there was an or, okay. There was an or in there, I just want to make sure we're getting it correctly.
Okay, so 6 PM, council priority.
My challenge will be at six PM. Can we get through that productively and come to a result? If not, then we've kicked it down the road for another 2 weeks. That's my concern.
It's up to us.
Councilmember, yes.
It appears that you can get through it constructively no matter what. It is the time that we take to deliberate over it. So, you know, in order to get to it, we have to get through it, and that might take a lot more time, as constructive as we may be. And therefore, moving to another time might be more appropriate so that we exercise due diligence.
So it sounds like put the council priorities at 6.
6 PM, council priorities, and then because we're so close on the rules and procedures, if I get all your comments by this Friday at 5 PM, we will turn it around and get it back into your court, a week from July 30th, give it back to you, and then maybe we could have a 7 PM final workshop on it.
Yeah, I don't think it would take very long to get through that, and then we can vote on it. Can we do can we vote on, put it also on to vote on that night as well?
I believe you can.
Okay.
Are we talking about June 3rd?
July, I think June 3rd.
August 3rd.
June 3rd.
August 3rd.
I think it's 2014, you
Yeah,
think it's June, you know.
Back to the.
I'm trying to avoid the heat.
Okay, so,
August.
right, so August 3rd is a Tuesday, it's our regular meeting. 6 PM workshop will be our priority. 7 PM workshop will be the finishing touches on our rules and procedures, and we will put it under the is it a resolution or an ordinance? Depends on that. I think it's an ordinance.
Support.
Yeah.
Then we will put it as
The
a
first
first read
read.
ordinance, and then you'll have a second read ordinance before you actually vote on it.
Yep.
Okay,
Works.
so I think we have a plan.
All right.
June was such a good month for me, I just hate to get away from it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What was the ordinance?
The ordinance is to accept the council's rules and procedures.
It's a
First
resolution.
read.
I got it.
Resolution 12.
It is a resolution.
It is a resolution, so,
Okay.
okay, well, then we can,
Yeah, it's a resolution.
Yeah.
So we will put it on as a resolution, and if you have any last minute changes, you can amend the resolution before you vote.
Resolution 12.1.
our council priorities, council rules and procedures. The one we've been talking about?
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
know
know.
what you've been talking about, but
Keep in mind, I thought it was June, so.
it was,
Okay, so I think we have a path forward. Okay, the next item on my report is to turn it over to Jandy so that she can do a special recognition of one of our library trustees.
Hello, everyone, Mayor and Council. Before I get to Mindy, I quickly wanted to thank and recognize the Friends of the Library and thank all of you that were able to attend the library soiree last Wednesday over at the winery. It was a fabulous event, and we really appreciate the community and the council and everyone coming out and showing their support for the library and for the Friends of the Library. This is one of their huge events, and I know it took them so much time and planning, and I'm thrilled with what a success it was. So thank you everyone for being there. The second thing I'm here to talk about tonight is Mindy Howe. She has served on the library board for the last 5 years, which is incredible. Currently she's our most senior member, and as a new library director, I know I have very much valued all of her input and support and all of her knowledge that she has from serving on the board for the last 5 years. So her last day will be July 31st. And so we wanted to recognize her and all of her hard work for the library and the community over these past 5 years. Thank you, Mindy. So normally we
so
give
much,
a
Mindy.
certificate to her in person at the city council, but since we're all, most of us are virtual, we'll be sending that to her in the mail.
Well, could I take a moment? I just want to say it's been rewarding. It's been a joy to work on the library board. You know, our library is just treasured by the community. So we're not pushing the stone uphill, right? It's, people love it. So I do want to acknowledge that my fellow board members are terrific, and thank the council and the library staff and the mayor, as always, has been this team, and Katie Allen and the city staff have been just always, and will continue to be, I know, great partners in giving vision and reality to the vision of the library. And so thank you all. I appreciate it very much. And I'm really excited to remain a library advocate and champion, and, see what's going to happen.
Well,
We
we've enjoyed
appreciate
having you,
your
Mindy. It's been
continued
a
support,
pleasure.
Mindy.
Thanks, Shandy.
You will be very missed at the monthly meetings, though.
Absolutely.
Nice of you
Big
to
shoes
say.
to fill. Big shoes to fill, and we do have applications open now to fill the seat that will be vacant. But we look forward to still having Mindy around advocating for the library as she has all these years. Thanks for your help.
Okay, on that note, I'm going to move along. A quick update on Trailhead. I know Councilmember Foyer gave you a very nice update. I just wanted to add one dimension. There is one of the best ways to deliver a public project on budget is to do design build, because then you get to have an all-in price on your design development. Long story short, one of the advantages with OAC was their experience in getting approval from the state of Washington to do design build, and it's called progressive design build. So I won't go through the technical things of it, but just suffice it to say, one of the reasons we're moving very quickly is you have to get your application into the state by August 20th. And so that's one of the reasons that we're moving forward. And then the last thing I want to mention about the Trailhead project, there's a lot of interest by a lot of restaurants in this project, which is really good. I want all of you to know that when that decision comes back, it's going to be in your lap to help us select the restaurant dimension for that project. So we're not there yet. We're probably a few months away, but there's going to be a nice opportunity for a restaurant to be at that facility. I'm going to move on to council vote tracking. This came up a while ago. Councilmember Dunn asked if we could keep track of your voting on all issues, resolutions, and ordinances. Kyle, Todd, Ann, and myself are meeting this week to go over it. We know what the city of Spokane does. It's a little intense as far as resources, IT resources, as well as I think staffing resources. So we're still doing our due diligence. The other thing was we're looking at Granicus. I'll be honest, we took a step back with Granicus. Was going to be a platform that was going to help us have you vote, and we would put your vote up on the screen and it would record your vote. But because of COVID, we never actually got to that point. So I didn't want you to think we forgot. We're still working on it, and we're having a staff meeting this week to go through it. Okay, moving along, the American Rescue Plan, I think enough's been said. Mayor, I think maybe we should extend the date out from August 20th. Sure. And give them a little bit more time, and then I'll incorporate Councilmember Kennedy's comments regarding other allocations that they may have received. Great. So it'd be part of the consideration. Okay, now park usage and reservations. There's been a question that came up, and I wanted to share with all of the council that our parks are available to the public. You don't need a reservation to have an event there. If you want a reservation, then you do, for instance, there was a reservation for Pavilion Park today in the picnic shelter for a birthday party. I think it started at 5 or 5:30. So they kind of get dibs on them, and they pay a fee to have that reservation. But we do not require reservations for groups that want to get together at any of our public parks. However, if you're having a sporting event or something like that, we want you to have a reservation because of the liability and insurance. But long story short, whether it's even a political event, a campaign event, a bunch of mothers that want to get together and talk about raising children, whatever, our parks are open to the public, and you do not have to have a reservation. but it is first come, first served. So reservations are helpful if you, want first dibs, if you will, on a certain park at a certain time. Harvard Road,
Can I ask a question in regards to that? I guess I have a concern with that, Katie, because I feel that the city needs to have knowledge of who wants to have an event in there. Because if somebody decides, and I'm just gonna grab some radical organization to put something together and they get 50 or 100 individuals show up, we're not aware of that. I think we put ourselves behind the 8 ball there.
so I'm gonna have Jen jump in. Jen and I, and actually Sean and Mayor had a discussion this morning about this. You're raising a good question. We could develop that policy. It would be our policy. We don't have that policy right now that would do something like that. I know, there are neighboring jurisdictions that even had parades, and they wanted to limit who could have a parade and those kinds of things for public gatherings. That is our policy right now, Mayor Pro Tem, so if the council wants to change it, absolutely.
I think the council should address that in the future. Thank you.
Councilmember Langford.
Yeah, just one question, Katie. Have we had any problem with somebody not making a reservation and say, going in and trying to move other people out of the pavilion because they have a larger group that they want to use the pavilion for?
Yeah, we posted in the pavilion who has the reservation. To my knowledge, we've never had an issue, but I'm gonna ask Jen, who would probably be notified first. Jen, could you, answer Councilmember Langford's question?
Yeah, we have had a little bit of issue with that actually just recently at Orchard Park. It's a new issue. We've not experienced that too much, if at all, at Pavilion, and definitely not at Rocky. The reservee has the priority to the shelter or the field over the first come, first serve. And in the last probably 3 weeks, I know Tate has let me know that there were situations where there was a reservation for one of the shelters at Orchard. They didn't want to confront the people that were already in the shelter. It's on a weekend. It's off hours when we don't have staff there. But it isn't a common problem, but yes, we have experienced it, particularly with how busy Orchard is. And again, just recently.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would hope that the council would be proactive on something like this, not wait till something happens, then we do a knee-jerk reaction to come up with some sort of a written policy, but as soon as possible. I don't see this as a complicated thing, but as soon as possible, I think the council should address this, come up with some sort of a written policy so we can move forward. Thank you.
Any other council members want to weigh in on bringing that back for discussion?
One of the requirements I was gonna mention is, I see Councilmember Poyer wanting to say something. In the RCW, it does say that we have to treat everyone equal as far as what we allow one group to have versus another group. There's equal access and equal opportunity.
Thank you, Mayor. My only question would be if the council's desire is to do something, as Mayor Pro Tem identifies, how do we approach that? Who approaches that? Who approaches that? Who wordsmiths it? Where does it come from?
At a policy level, we could do some research and give you some suggestions, see what other communities do. Some communities also have a tiered rate for, if you're a city resident, you pay this, if you're a non-city resident, you pay that. We don't have that. We have one fee structure that's adopted as part of the budget process. But, Jen, do you want to weigh in on this? I think we could probably put together some research.
MRSC would be a huge help. I would just get in touch with them and have them provide it. That's why we're members.
I agree.
Is there a strong desire by the council to move forward with this? Not making a motion, I'm just looking for an unofficial.
I guess the question is what we're trying to fix.
That question to me? Laws are put in effect anticipating what might happen. Not only what has happened to come up with a law or a policy, but anticipate what might happen. It's only a suggestion for the council for consideration. If the majority doesn't feel it's important, then we move on. It's not brain surgery, folks.
Councilmember Garcia, go ahead.
I believe, and thank you, Member Kennedy, I believe the simple solution, we pretty well have it, and perhaps Jen would recommend it as well. Whoever puts in the reservation, wherever they put in the reservation, an A-frame goes up the night before and lets everybody know that this has been reserved by so-and-so. And so what happens is when someone approaches it and they say, oh, yeah, it's already been reserved, it's nothing more. And that stays up until the people have their event and leave. So it's nothing extra. If nothing is there, then it tells someone coming that they can just use it. If something is there, it says it's already reserved.
And
Councilmember Follier. Go ahead, Jen.
I will say that we do, Tate will issue a confirmation permit that she advises the group take with them to said reserve space, so that they have proof that they have the reservation in case they do want to show it to a group saying, hey, do you mind moving out? We have this reservation form showing proof that we paid for this space. So we have that. We also do have it posted in our shelters that reservations take priority over first come, first serve. And then Tate and I actually talked over the last week with the recent issues at Orchard Park about working with Randy to post a schedule week by week of what reservation, not necessarily names and information, but just blocks of time that said shelter is out of commission because it's reserved. That way we're kind of like triple covered in that sense. So we thought we would try that with a schedule each week and see kind of where that gets us. We felt like that would help with any issues and cross use of the shelter.
Councilmember Follier.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I don't feel like the topic of a reservation and somebody's already there, that's just, it's an unintentional circumstance to me. I don't think anybody does it unintentional on purpose. Sounds like we're taking some precautions to notify that there's a reservation. What I was referring to more was what the Mayor Pro Tem was talking about, is right now we have nothing in writing that says who can use our parks. Is that what I heard correctly? That's the part of it I'm curious
Doesn't
about.
sound like we can do that. Is that what I'm
Sean, I'm
understanding?
gonna ask our city attorney to help with a response.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry?
Sean?
Yep, sorry. Hit the red button. What was that?
Bring it up.
So the question, Sean, is, can we limit use of our park to certain groups? Let me have Councilmember Follier pose.
The question is, we're discussing producing a policy that just brings awareness to the city of who's using the park. We just need to know that who's using it and when. Kind of like what Jen deals with on the reservations. I mean, didn't you say earlier that some people get approval to have an event there?
Correct. So
But
if you
that's
want,
not a requirement, is what I'm hearing.
correct. So let me say it a little more eloquently. If you're a sports team and you want to practice soccer on this day at this time, you come to City Hall, there's an insurance requirement, and you get a reservation for those fields. Baseball, the same thing. Skyhawks, sports camp, same thing. Birthday parties, graduation, wedding receptions, same thing. So that guarantees you that that space is available for you. It does not prevent people from getting together. A family reunion shows up, I bring my lawn chairs, roll out a blanket, and have a picnic at Pavilion Park. Whether there's 5 of you or 50 of you, we don't manage that kind of activity. We don't take reservations. You're not required to have a reservation.
Fair enough, thank you. I'll ask for more time to think about this. Thanks.
Any other comments? All right, Katie, go ahead.
So Harvard Road closure, we've mentioned this before, and I appreciate Todd putting it up on the screen. I will tell you this is hot off the press because it keeps changing. But as of today, and we're hopeful that this does not change again, that Harvard Road Bridge closure will start August 9th through August 23rd. So they will be closed before school open. So we'll be open when school opens, how's that? If this project will have a major impact on our city, the ability to get into and out of our city, our businesses, our residents, so on, our restaurants, and all will be impacted. We're asking people to plan ahead, we're asking for patience, and Mayor Kaminskas, Damon Simmons, Chief Simmons, and myself, as well as Randy Edwards from our staff, is gonna personally go door to door to all the businesses along Country Vista, Appleway, Harvard, and Liberty Lake Road to answer their questions and give them heads up. We've held off doing this until next Monday, and the reason is because the dates kept changing. And so we didn't want to get out there with bad information. But we do have a strategy to communicate this, and Jen will be in charge of our social media, and Kate will be in charge of our reader board. We will put it on our website. We will hand deliver flyers. We will have them at the library. This will be a major undertaking for our city. So let me walk you through what this means. If you're on the south side of I-90 and you want to go east, you can use the loop ramp by Walgreens. That eastbound loop ramp will be open. You can use Appleway to State Line. If you want to go west and you're on the south side of I-90, you will have to use Country Vista. If you're on the north side of I-90 and you want to go east, you will need to go north to Wellesley or Trent. And if you want to go west, you have some options. You can use Mission, you can use Indiana, and you can go to Barker or Trent or whatever that direction. This is going to be 2 weeks of pain for decades of gain. So remember that at the end of this, our lives will be better. But it is not, I can't understate the impact to our community on this.
And as part of that process, we're also going to be getting and reconfirming main contact people, name, position, email, and phone number at each of those businesses, which helps us going forward with communication for all the businesses, because we don't have all that up to date. But if things change, it'll be a lot easier to send an email update to each of those businesses and hitting them again. But the face-to-face contact will allow us to answer questions as they come up as well.
So that's, and then right after that, then it's Mayor, I described it southbound Harvard. So you're on the north side of I-90, southbound Harvard, westbound I-90 will be closed for 2 weeks.
Yeah, so the westbound on-ramp coming from the north.
From the north to the south.
Yes.
Yeah.
So between the roundabout and the
Yeah.
highway, yeah.
So, encouraging businesses to promote, remote work, off-peak travel. And then in addition, we're in coordination with the county and the state to put a three-way stop at State Line and Appleway so that it will help, people coming from Liberty Lake towards Idaho to, have that a shorter queue, if you will, because that could be a very, very long wait to get to State Line if that's the direction you're heading.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Question, you say we're working with Idaho on that?
No, so it's county right-of-way, and it's a state project. So I had a conversation with both the state and the county this morning, and so the detour plan from Washout is gonna include the three-way stop sign at this time.
Okay,
Mike, none of this is done.
right.
So it's all still in progress. We do have 3 weeks, and so, yeah, right now, things are going well, and the state is including that three-way stop in their traffic control.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Which has nothing to do with what they may do long-term with
Right.
that intersection, right?
And then, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to give a shout out to one of our employees, Phil Mesnick, who is our new project manager. And the flashing beacons have so far come in ahead of schedule and 7% under budget. So we're not done, but it's looking really good, ahead of schedule and under budget. So
That's
we wanted to
exciting.
share that with you. And then finally on Kramer Road is a dose of reality. You've heard that pipes and poles and conduit and panels are in short supply, and they are. We do not have a start date for the Kramer Road overpass. Those supplies, some of the precursor work, which is moving utilities and the like, they're faced with some supply challenges. So the contract has been awarded, but there's been some delays just in the supplies needed to start the project. So we'll keep you informed as we go along, but it is becoming to be a challenge for that contractor.
I don't think any of us are surprised by that. Councilmember Fuller?
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Mayor, quick question. When does the contract ticker start? When they actually push shovel down, or now?
So they give a notice to proceed, and I believe, I will confirm a date, I don't know, but once you get a notice to proceed, the ticker starts and you have X contract days to finish it. Remember, it's a state contract, so I don't know if they've given them the notice
So
to proceed.
there's no
There is
backlash.
exceptions for, supplies, and there are, considerations for time delays, approved time delays because of supplies. And then unfortunately, as you know, if you go beyond that, then there tends to be liquidated damages and things like that. But
Nothing that would come back to the city.
so on that happy note, we're gonna move on to events. So Farmers Market is ongoing. 2 movies this, I think it's Saturday, is Onward at Pavilion Park. And then the following week, July 30th, the Friday, Toy Story 4 at Orchard Park. The Cornhole Tournament Throwdown is August 28th, and then the Labor Day City Birthday. Dan, I know you're working on that with Jen, and so far it's lined up for September 4th. We don't have confirmation of the fireworks yet. Jen, anything else I should add?
No, I think we know so far it's going to be the symphony in the evening, car show during the afternoon, midday, and some games and fun bounce house entertainment. We're still working the details out on the fireworks, and it's going to be weather dependent.
And we're trying to work on food options. It turns out it's also the weekend of Pig Out in the Park. So we're trying to get creative with regards to food being there. I actually picked up a couple of business cards from a couple events I was at this weekend. People's food trucks who won't be at Pig Out in the Park. So we may have some options on the food truck, Jen. So we're still working through that. And Councilmember Dunn's been on that committee as well from the Kiwanis standpoint. Oh, go ahead.
Question, Mayor. On the city birthday, we had talked in the past about possibility of T-shirts or something or other. Are we moving ahead with something?
Somebody brought up something that was really easy to move forward with, and we're ordering, the Kiwanis is actually ordering 1,000 of the small Liberty Lake flags to be given out, which we think is more than enough, but we always have use for those, and because they get them from a company in China, and then we will reimburse them for that.
Okay, so we're not moving ahead with T-shirts or something like that. I think that's fine.
Yeah,
Thank you.
lower cost giveaways, yeah.
Very good.
Okay. Katie's on her way back in. Do you have any more on your report?
There, that concludes.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure. Okay. All right, so we are on to workshop discussions. We are back to Community Engagement Commission. Councilmember Kurtz, you're up.
Todd has roll point. I sent it today, but let me send it again, maybe it didn't.
If you have it on yours, can,
Well, I want to be able to read my notes.
Oh,
too,
true.
So, let me hang on just a second here. You do that?
Well, Mr. Wizard.
He is Mr.
Yeah. Maybe we're gonna have another opening there.
No, almost did not, because it's a little dusty in here, no windows open on them. Not even show me yet, so, well, I think I better get up. Well, there might be another application process happening pretty soon. So that's the way it happens, right? Thank you, I apologize.
No apology necessary.
He's 7, if we're gonna, yeah. All right, so we are back to talk about community engagement. And I'm starting off with a recap of the last workshop, which might actually, now that I'm looking at it, be a little bit hard to see, but I had it organized by council members and mayor, of just kind of some of the points and the questions that you guys had. And since it's hard to read, I'll just kind of read it on here for you guys so you guys can see it. If I would have been a better presenter, I would have had this in hand for you, and I apologize for that. So a couple of the questions after watching the meeting again. So Councilmember Severs, and these are just what was said during the meeting or after. Not comfortable moving forward until a group of 9 people come forward. The next question or comment, is it necessary to manage and run a separate commission? Is a formal commission necessary? Are there already people who want to do this and can they come forward? This would be a wasted energy if we can't get 5 to 9 people to come forward. We want to have citizens come talk to us and say that we request this, and we are the 8 or 9 people that want to do this. And also see a group of passionate and self-guided citizens who come forward to advise us on what we could do better for this project and see that it leads to other projects. Councilmember Kennedy was more interested in residents and not business owners. One of his questions was, what if positions remain open or not filled? A concern that the commission would slow down decisions of the council. That he trusts staff to do the work and research and to make recommendations to the council so that he can rely on it for decisions versus a citizen group. Encourages participants who are fresh and not in other commissions and committees. And slow it down a little bit, do another workshop to have a successful first read ordinance. Councilmember Foyer's questions, do we need 9 members? Whether it might make sense to do it by precinct or quadrant. That he wants to hear from volunteers who want to be a part of the project. That he doesn't want to rush through it, feels like it's moving pretty quick. He had a question about whether the staff has time, and then of course, what is the cost to run it? The mayor, her comments and questions, the first one was that staff time might be an issue and that it does need a staff liaison. One of her questions was, is a formal commission necessary, and that we need to walk before we run? And then to ask for citizen, one of her suggestions was to ask for citizen comment on this idea on the Facebook page. Councilmember Dunn, his question centered around operationalizing reports and how those would look in practice. And then Councilmember Langford's question was just, do we need 9? So that's a little bit of a recap of where we're at the last meeting. So the next slide is what has happened since the last workshop. So I met with Katie and Jen. I responded to and met with council members who wanted to discuss community engagement. And then I also spoke with Mayor Kaminskas, one of our previous mayors, a city council president from another city, and again, they're most notably numerous residents who reached out and wanted to talk about community engagement and just the support of community engagement. Councilmember Dunn had reached out to Central Valley School District to set up a meeting to discuss their thought stream platform, and that was the platform that they used as they were going through, everything that they've done to build buildings and everything. They use that platform there. We haven't been able to have that meeting yet. And then just kind of spending some time on my own researching kind of the thoughts that I have and other places that this model has worked well. So, recap of the meeting with city staff. So when I met with Katie and Jen, they did mention that staff time may be an issue. And what I gathered, and Katie will obviously correct me if I'm wrong here, is that from what I take out of the meeting, it seems that even without the addition of a commission to the staff plate collectively, from my perspective, it sounded like there needed to be a little bit of a discussion about workload and staff time during the budget season earlier. And this has really nothing to do with the commission, but just that we have a very scrappy staff. And we have people, Jen's managing the Facebook page, Kate's doing work on stuff, we have Randy who's doing stuff. But some of those things might be better housed under one person to do like our digital footprint. So I think that there are, while I admire their creativity, I want to support them and having them be successful and then having the city be successful too. And so, Katie and Jen both supported the idea of community engagement. They were very kind and gracious and offered to facilitate successive sessions with the community to get kind of their thoughts around what community engagement can look like. And one of their suggestions also was to have each of us nominate one or two people from the community to sit on those meetings with them and kind of figure out a way forward. So that's an update about that. And so kind of where I still am trying to go, I guess, is raising the bar. So the tasks that we identified, that were identified in the strategic plan, are a little bit more transactional in nature. The focus is more on dissemination of information. So these are the ones that are taken straight out of the strategic plan: social media, city website, electronic message boards and information kiosks, farmers market and other events, the splash, and then information maintenance. So the title on this slide is Raising the Bar. We have done work. The city has done work. I haven't done any of this. The city has done work. They've taken steps to communicate with the community. And I think that it's a really good foundation, and I think that we want to take it to the next step, the next level. Because when I look at some of these tasks, social media, we talked about social media and how we like, it's just a small snippet of the population, and we kind of, sometimes we discount that because it isn't a well-rounded picture of our entire, doesn't capture everybody. And then again, with the information maintenance, it sounds like right now that task is spread out amongst a lot of different people just due to the way, again, they're really trying to make things work, but I do think that there's a way that the council can support that through potentially having Katie look at what would she need in order to do this more successfully. Not that it's not a success, I'm not being critical, just if there's additional support that she could use to take things forward. So one of the things that was also in the strategic plan was the progressive information exchange. So just the literal definitions of progressive. So we're talking about something happening gradually or in stages, step by step, making use of or interested in new ideas, findings or opportunities, and moving forward or onward. So advancing, just moving forward. The definition of exchange is to give and receive reciprocally. So I do want us to continue to step forward. And the phrases that you guys are all going to recognize some of your catchphrases here. We've got small bites, we've got baby steps, we've got walk before we run. So I have heard all that. I understand where you guys are coming from. But what I'm saying is the city has taken steps, and I'm hoping that the city can take one more in advancing the goal of progressive community engagement. The sense that I have from speaking to people over the last few weeks is that the community is here, they're ready, they want to be invited to the table, and that if this council invites them to the table, we will have more than enough people to carry this forward. The other thing that I'm noting is that we are turning 20 years old, the city, and I think it's time. So I think one of the questions, particularly that Councilmember Severs had, and maybe others that they may not have expressed, were about whether or not to move forward with the commission or something else. And so I put up here some of my thoughts on the benefits of the commission. The first one is that there's a selection process. The mayor, the city council have the opportunity to consider the candidates and approve them. The commission itself has a clear purpose that aligns and supports the mission of the city. The deliverables are clear, the purpose is clear, and then the ordinance also supports the exploration of ideas and contemplates and encourages creativity. So we don't want to do what we've always done. We want to try to do something a little bit new, a little bit better. I think the benefit of this commission is a solid gesture and invitation to the community, and it sends a strong signal that the city council is committed to community engagement and willing to meaningfully engage and invest in the effort with citizens. And as I was thinking about this, I'm thinking of relate together. I think this is a real actionable item to make that philosophy and that piece that people have rallied around over the last 2 years come together. The commission itself would be consistent across the transitions in the council, city staff, or leadership, and they'll also have standing to contribute. I would hate for a group of citizens to come forward and then be like, it's just a group of citizens. They're not a commission. They come forward with some great ideas. I would like them to have, the standing to, or I guess equality, here. And again, it's a budget neutral investment. We're not asking anybody to spend any money unless they come up with a fabulous idea that actually does cost money. I'm not saying we'll never spend money, but today it's a budget neutral, investment. Next thing is why now? So we have residents, the city council, we continue to express the need to engage the community and understand the priorities. We talked about that, like every agenda item tonight was about, we really want to understand the citizens and what they want. We need their help. Second one, the city, again, is turning 20 years old this year. And we have citizens, they're excited, they're ready to do this, they're excited about the idea. So, let's see. One of the things that I've noticed in talking with people is that as they've asked questions about it or as I've reached out to other people, they've been excited about it. They're like, oh man, I have this friend, I have that friend who would really love to be a part of this. So I think that if one of the concerns is the number of volunteers, I think many of us would be surprised at how many would come forward to be a part of this. So the top three issues that I gleaned from the grid that I put up earlier and rewatching our meeting last time twice, the first one was that we're moving too fast. And so I have some of the questions that I have in my mind is, because I'm hearing what you're saying, I'm listening to that, moving too fast for us. I think that's one of my questions. Is slowing down necessary? Is there a business need for us to slow down? Is there a procedural issue for us to slow down? Or is it more of a hesitation? It's just, we generally move slow when we don't want to move fast. I'm not really sure where that's at. But we are a different council than even 2 years ago. We've had 42% turnover from 2 years ago, just with the people here in this room. So I think that we're on our third workshop. The first time that, at least I could find any way that I asked for it to be on the agenda was May 18th. So we're at June, July, we're at 2 full months of talking a little bit about community engagement. And so I just want to make sure everybody knows that I'm not trying to make anybody run. I just want to take another step. I've worked in city, county, and state government, and as a state employee, it moves so slow because it's so big. It's such a big shift. But I think a small municipal city is the most lean and the most nimble of all of the governments that I've been a part of anyway. And organizational change should be one of the things that does move quicker, in my opinion. So maybe it's my perspective coming from the state that I'm like, why? Like, we're small, we could move a little faster. The second one was staff time. And like I said earlier, I think there's a larger need out there for support of city staff, but I think that can be addressed as we're talking about budget priorities and funding. I think that's a fixable thing. I don't think it's a discussion for tonight. I think it's a larger issue, but I don't think the root cause is actually the commission. And then the third thing was that the citizens reach out first and let us know that they're interested. And I think they did when they elected us. I think that we are the leaders of the city, and they elected us to make the best decisions for the city as a whole. And I would like us to lead forward on community engagement. One of the things that I campaigned on in 2019 was community engagement. I've noticed on Chris's platform, and we talked about this too, that community engagement is one of the things that she has been interested in for a long time. And then again, looping back around to the Liberty Lake Together, that was one thing that I think our community rallied around last year in particular. And I think that, again, moving forward on this is one action step in making those words have a tangible meaning. So I think we're getting to deal breakers. So we're going to go back one slide. There was the graph that I put up that had what I had called before hesitations and questions. And what I'm interested tonight to figure out is if there are any of those questions or hesitations that are actual deal breakers. like no-go, non-starter, not interested because of those questions. Maybe put the grid up again if you want, I don't know.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I'd like to go back to the original thing that you showed of everybody's comments for the council. Small print is kind of difficult to read, but under comment that was credited to me, I take exception to this. It says that I trust staff to do the work and research and to make recommendations to the council so that we can rely on it for decisions group. I'm diabolically opposed to that. I have never implied that. Long before this 40% change in the council, we've talked about this Community Engagement Commission. I brought this up before. I've been supportive of this every time. Every time we have this discussion, at least 3 times I make a comment, but I'm 95% in favor of this. I've had this conversation with you, I'm in favor of it. I had certain questions about the number of individuals and also who would be on that commission. There was under no circumstance that I feel that the staff should run this whole thing. My comment with staff was normally how we process, so it makes it easier for council to move forward, is we have individuals to be able to assist you with this. Because that's one of the criteria we have here, to have staff. I had this discussion with Katie, we're talking about this, and normal business, if we don't have the funds, we don't get staff. That's not an issue for Liberty Lake City. We have the funds. We can get the staff. It takes a period of time to get that. I am extremely supportive of this group. I've had conversations with you, pointing out numerous times. So I really take exception to that right there. I think it was a misunderstanding, and I want that removed.
I did watch the video twice, and I paraphrased slightly, but that was the gist of the meat of that part of the meeting. So I'm sorry if I didn't actually like verbatim type it down. But we have the grid up. Is there anything up here that's a deal breaker?
Councilmember Langford?
Yeah, not a deal breaker, but I guess I'm going to ask probably the most unpopular question, okay? We have a responsibility to post information by whatever usual and safe means available for us to do. That's our job. When we post the information, our job is not to go out and police everybody and make them go to that site and look at it. We're doing a good job. Facebook, City Book, or city pages, okay, that we do, all right? If people don't want to use it, or they don't want to stop at City Hall, it comes to a point where we've done what we've done, okay? So I guess the unpopular question is how far and to what extent do we carry on? Because there's always going to be a pocket of people who don't know. They never heard of that before. They weren't aware of it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I see what your attempt appears to be, that something new and wonderful is going to be created that's going to be so inclusive that 11,000 residents are going to be notified all the time, anytime. Not going to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen either.
Okay. So, to what end do we move on with this? Do I think it's a good commission? I have no problem with it. I think 9's heavy. Okay, we have trouble with just the 7 of us getting to a conclusion. Okay, but I just kind of want us to understand that we do the best we can do with what we have, and we can't force feed anybody. Okay? So with that, I don't know what you're looking for as far as deal breakers, okay? If you want to ramrod this and go for it, I don't have a problem with it, and and I don't think anybody else has a problem with it. Okay? So, why do you feel there's a problem?
I think that there were a number of questions from the last meeting, and it sounded like people weren't sure, we were moving too fast. So we decided to have another workshop, to talk about it again, to make sure that everybody's questions that we can answer are answered. And like I said at the last meeting, I think that, some of the questions we're just not gonna have today, unless we try this. I think my question is whether or not the council wants to try this, whether putting any sort of final edits into the ordinance and moving forward with the first read is where we want to head, or not.
I don't know that it needs an ordinance, but that's another story for a different time. But you know, if somebody was standing here choking, we'd have to have a workshop on whether to call 911. That's just the way we do things. Okay? Unless it's a DJ.
But we do have, Sergeant working here.
So my point is we have a method to our madness, okay? So, yeah, it may seem like it takes a long time to you. That's okay by me.
No, go ahead, I already spoke.
But perhaps, thank you, Member Kurtz, for bringing this up. As you know, people are my business. Community residents are the name of the game with me. However, I do recognize that sometimes words make a difference in how we categorize things. So perhaps, the recommendation might be that it's called something different, that it elicits what you're looking for, which is neighborhood community engagement. Neighborhood community engagement does not necessarily mean there's a commission, but it does the same exact thing that you are promoting, which is to bring the people's voice to the table. We are neighborhoods, although we are at large elected or, in my case, an appointed member. But if we change the name of the group, there becomes no need to commission it, resolve it or by ordinance. But it means that perhaps each member of the council has a particular group of citizens that come to them, that talk to them, that want to engage with them. And then your model that you present, that you build, is exactly what a commission would do. It's the same exact model. It just has a different name. There is no legal standing. It too may determine that there's funding that's available. I'm going to give a classic example. Spokane County. Spokane has neighborhood community engagement. They've got this written up so solid that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and it does exactly and even more than you're presenting to us today. And it forces us, as members of the council, me being newly minted into this fine group, it forces us to reach out to the citizens instead of saying they should reach to you. They are the employer, we are the employees. And so in doing so, each one of us, me being a new member of this great team, has people that talk to us all the time. So then in that pocket, if it's designed, it'll be the same where member Langford lives, where member Foyer lives, but it forces us to do more than come to a round table and discuss the business of the day without the inclusion of the voices that we do the business of the day for. So maybe my colleagues, I'm not going to use the word hung up on a term, but perhaps the term is a softer way of saying you would like to see us engage the community more. You would like to see the community want to be engaged more. You have a lot of people who are engaging with you early and often, and you don't want it just to be an isolated thing. And yes, it may cost some money. And of course, there needs to be a staff member that helps with getting the information on paper so it can be reported out what's happening. But it's a very simple thing that we're making a little, it is my belief, that we're making a little more difficult to adopt because we're looking at the nuances of perhaps funding. Where is it coming from? Who's going to oversee these people? Who are these people? Well, I was one of these people just a few weeks ago. And so it hasn't changed. I'm still interested. I'm still a constituent of all of you at the same time being a leader. So it might just be the way it's going about making it so official that it's not necessary to make it that official, but to have the exact same thing you want in the exact same fashion, using the exact same models that we've seen, that we have, and getting it done. And I think you would be, I believe that it would be more successful done a way where no one's doing an ordinance. And then, you know, these commissions that we have, the youth commission, where are they? We don't see it anymore. It kind of disappeared. So take it to the people and have them do it in the neighborhood way. I'm willing to provide you as much support. I will work beside you on all of this. I will do whatever it is to bring their voices to the table, to engage them. That's my pledge to the citizens, so I offer that to you. But I think that might be some of the reason that there's a little pushback. I don't know for sure, but it appears to me.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Using the word deal breaker, I don't have a deal breaker in this. I never have. I've been supportive of this. I get a little tired having to keep saying I'm supportive of this. I am supportive of this being an ordinance, though. And the reason being is that I want citizens to come forward, as they've come forward for Planning Commission, as they've come forward for Parks and Art. And this is another commission they can come forward of and say, this is something I'm involved with. I have a say-so here that I'm a corridor to the council on what, and I have 5 or 7 or 9 individuals on this group. I think there's a certain amount of status to it, and if that brings people out of their shell to get involved, give them the status. I have no challenge with it whatsoever. So I think it gives validity to it. If we didn't have it as an ordinance, it would still be productive, but I just don't think that some individual would come at it with the idea that I'm there for 2 years, and I want to do the best I can for that 2-year period of time. When this has been brought up before, I've only had 4 or 5 things that I question, but I've also said to you, Annie, that these things are not deal breakers, because I have voiced against other things in the past, which I voted against, but I support the majority. I have said from day one, I'm supportive of this. If the council wants to make it an ordinance, resolution, or anything, I will be in favor of it. I do question the number of individuals, and I really would like to see, to encourage other citizens who are not now involved in other organizations to get involved, because we just get more of that. Because here's what happens. The majority of us who are sitting in this council today came from being on either Parks and Art, some type of a program that they got involved with, and that allowed them to make the step up to this level. So I'm encouraged by this. I would like to see us move forward. I would recommend that there's going to be another workshop, that we look at what the criteria is going to be, what are the numbers, and how many are going to be, get the majority to go along, whatever the majority goes along with, let's go along with it and move forward.
And I think my question is whether we need to have another workshop or not. I think if the question, it seems like one of the questions was between 5 or 9. And so if there was language added in there that was between 5 and 9, which doesn't limit them to 5, gives them the ability to have 9, is that a fair compromise? Would people be comfortable with that? I'm hoping for voices, so I know what to write.
Go ahead, Councilmember
Sure,
Collier.
let me jump in here. No, I'm kidding. No. I don't have any deal breakers, as you put it. You commented earlier about the budget neutral. I guess, if there's staff time involved, then we're not really budget neutral. Is that a fair statement?
It is a fair statement, yeah.
So I guess for me then at this point, I would just want to know, maybe hear from our staff folks, how can we support this? What's it going to cost? I'm not against it. I'm in favor of it. Just want to make sure we cross all our T's and dot our I's before we jump in with both feet. So yeah, for me now, it comes down to, can we support the program? And let's see, yeah, that's it. I have one other question. I thought I heard you say, or maybe suggest that, we could interlock or intertwine this effort with the existing communication efforts we have. Did I not hear that right? Thought I heard you say there may be opportunity here to the Facebook and the website and the social media and the whatever, that bring it all under one tent.
Well, I think that, this is Katie's realm here, but I think that if we're wondering about who would support this, and there's these other, tasks and workload that are kind of spread out at this point, if there was a way to bring that under one house with other duties that meet Katie's needs, for communication and engagement and things that may come out of the recommendations from this group, and just needs that Katie has and Mayor, then I think there's a way to kind of help maybe inform that process.
So at one point, we had Anita
Yeah.
helping with those types of things, and she's no longer with us, unfortunately. She was great at it. So I don't recall that we've ever placed that position.
Go ahead.
So I'd like to hear from staff. Thank you.
So, thank you, and I appreciate the information and the recap. And I'm just gonna make an observation. We at the city, we are kind of ad hoc, and I appreciate the creativity because we do have fantastic staff that is always, we got a call from a business today that needs a canopy, and we had someone bring the canopy over. So we have people that are stepping and being responsive to our community in so many ways. So having said that, I always look for what's a good model. And when we had Anita, it was a good model because it all fell into one place and it was easy to organize. So if Lisa needed something, or Jen, or Chief Simmons, or Jandy, you had a go-to person. We don't have that anymore because it's kind of parceled out. You know, Jen does this really well, Lisa does this really well, Kate does this really well. It would be nice if we could have kind of a centralized place. I'm not sure it's a full FTE, but it's at least a half an FTE. And I will also say two other things. I don't think you can hire a consultant to do this. I know there's firms out there that do it, but, and on a specialty basis maybe, but it's having that consistent voice, that consistent person. So maybe a half an FTE, Mayor, we could talk about maybe in the budget next year. And that person could be on point as a PIO, as a public information officer, and connect with community neighborhood engagement. The other thing that I think we do well as the city is we push information out. So whether you're reading board, the splash, the website, the social media, we try to catch all the different dimensions in our community. What we don't do well is get it back. Say, tell me your opinion on X. Tell me your opinion on Y. We don't facilitate that interaction and that engagement piece. Because, you know, we haven't had that as a priority or as a staff person or as staffing. So that's what I appreciate the comments from the staff. But I think a half of an FTE, Mayor, could probably, someone that has.
We can toss this around a little bit, yeah.
I think I've seen that at some point on a PIO.
Yeah.
And I think that the reciprocal part is the part that I'm really trying to hit hard with. How do we get that information, not only for us here to make decisions, but for the staff to make decisions every day, like Katie mentioned in the last meeting. Either the meeting of the, that we had or here, that, like the website, do we continue to, we don't know. But, you know, if people aren't using it, is there a reason they're not using it? I mean, I think that there's some really good information that we need more ingestion of information. We need to hear more from it. I really want to make clear that in no way am I being critical of what we're doing now. I think that we are doing a good job. And I think that, like I said, we've got really creative staff here that are, you know, Randy's good at this part, Kate's good at this part. Jen's good at that part, but maybe it would be better to have some of that all together, and that's what I'm hearing Katie say too.
Mayor Pro Tem, then I want to try to circle this up.
Okay, this is slightly a little bit off subject, but yet you touched on it several times, that I believe that the city, we have done everything we possibly can to get avenues to get information to the citizens. We do it on our website, we do it on our billboards, we do it as much as possible. Now, can we improve that? Yes, we can, we're always moving towards that. But I do have to say that when elected officials, all of us, respond on social media, individuals will not be encouraged to go to our website. I think it would be advantageous as we as elected officials that when we see something on social media to say, I'd recommend you go to our website where you can get that answer. And then we as elected officials make sure that that answer is there when they get there. Because then we get the citizens going to that instead of just contacting Mike Kennedy. And that does happen a lot. I've got individuals just on the bridge, 5 have contacted me, want to know what's going on the bridge. That all of us have that, but we have to, I believe we have to take the initiative as elected officials to say, here's where you go for that. Let me assist you to go there to do that, versus answer their question, and then that becomes the norm.
I'm gonna hit, Councilmember Garcia, and then being respectful of the discussion, but also of our time, because we have 3 more workshops in council business. So go ahead.
And I apologize, I'll do my best to be brief. I don't believe you're asking us, to have this group committee engagement so that they can ask us questions. What I believe you suggested over time, a number of times, is that you want to seek information from them. What do they have to say about X and Y? Not what do they have to ask us, but what do they have to say? What can they offer to us? What can they do to enhance what we're doing? Or make a recommendation on how we can do something better? Or the best thing is to make a suggestion on where they fit in the scheme of the decisions and the policies that are being made. That is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing less of them asking us questions. And I think that on the website, it would be much better to be giving them information where it's based on someone else in the community, a citizen who said something and it's a wonderful idea, and now it's on the website saying, we're creating such and such, or we're going to do such and such because it was a recommendation by a citizen in your community who, I might be wrong on what I think you're.
I think that having the ability for them to be a part of the process, to create the methods that are sustainable for us to continually have that back and forth for the next 20 years. Whether that's some sort of digital thing that supports a digital platform, whether it's we start scheduling regular town halls, like that's the creative part that they're going to help with, and whatever meets the city's needs as well. There's got to be that balance there. And then after, continuing to have like more of the neighborhood ambassador type role. So I think that there's an evolution of it, but the meat in the beginning is figuring out how the methods, the recommendations, working with the city here to continually have that back and forth, the flow back and forth. So I want to be mindful of our time, but in order for it to move forward as an ordinance, there needs to be at least 2 other people that want to put it on as a first read. So,
I move to place the item as a first read. This will be my first time to execute putting something forward, but I move to put the item of community engagement on as a first read.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? So say you can't do that. So we have a motion and a second. I know we've had a lot of discussion, but I'll still, any discussion on adding this as a first read?
My personal opinion, it's premature.
I guess my question is a little more technical. Are we able to approve an ordinance and not have it attached to the budget somehow? There's there's obviously a cost involved with an ordinance, right?
So if you pass an ordinance that requires city staffing for us to execute that ordinance, and it requires a budget, then we would come back with a budget amendment. The council could decide to approve or not approve a budget.
So the ordinance comes first, or the budget comes first?
You can do either, but we would not, if you pass an ordinance and it required resources that you did not fund, then we could not move forward with the implementation.
Right, just because the ordinance in place doesn't mean it's enacted, right? Because it won't have a time, we would have to be able to support it.
Can somebody explain to me, first of all, why it needs an ordinance?
So if I may, just so the conversation that Councilmember Kurtz and I had last week, my concern was kind of just that, is that the more formal we make it, the less people we might have to come forward, because on our commissions typically include sending an application, having interviews, deciding on those people, having appointed, confirmed by council, and then committing to a certain term. So my concern was making it that formal, was that we would have less people engaged, rather than, starting off with just more of a community, an informal process to see who all we can get on board, and then make it more formal after that.
Let me ask you a question. Did we do a ordinance for the planning commission?
Yes,
Yes.
we have a planning commission,
Did we do that with
Parks and Arts.
Parks and Art?
Yes.
And
Salary commission too, and,
Salary commission, and youth commission?
yep, and library
That's
board.
why we needed an ordinance this time too. I apologize. But yes,
Follow-up question to that, if I can. Sorry, Mike.
No, go right ahead.
Was it the ordinance first, or was it the budget?
it doesn't matter, because if you make an ordinance, you're already assuming that at some point it's going to have an influence on the budget. And we'll have to take up that matter when it happens. You understand?
Is that how it went for the others?
I don't
I wasn't
remember.
around.
Yeah, I don't even think the budget came up in some of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so let's, go ahead, and Mayor Pro Tem, and then let's take our
We're
vote.
still on a discussion
Yes, we are.
of the motion. I'm not in favor of moving forward with the first read ordinance until the council has decided, the majority has agreed on what we're moving forward to a first read ordinance. I am not comfortable when we go to a first read ordinance and there's still questions the council has not resolved. That, I believe, can be done in one more workshop. Do we get the general consensus of council that yes, we are happy with this? That, to me, leads to a first read ordinance.
Okay, all right, if there's no more discussion, I'll go ahead
I'd
and,
just like to make.
yes, go ahead.
Make one more note.
Sure.
Because you asked for another workshop doesn't mean you're against it, okay? Secondly, it doesn't mean you're trying to slow things down. But we mentioned things tonight that are kind of new and been added as to what a possibility is, and then we just skipped over it and kept moving, okay? I'd like to back up and be able to talk about some of those new things that I'm just hearing about. Maybe they could be incorporated into your plan, okay? And move more holistically at one time, instead of come back and piecemeal, hey, well, let's do this, let's add that, let's do it this way. So I am in favor of it. I think we can get something ironed out, but I would like not only the chance to think about it and to have more information brought before us, but I'd like to have the full council make that decision too.
Councilmember Kurtz.
So I think the difference between what Councilmember Garcia was suggesting and what I've put forward is commission or not commission. Is that kind of the gist?
That's correct.
So that's the biggest question, is a commissioner or not commission, and so then that leads to, if you're wanting information brought back to you, I need to understand what that information is to bring it back. So I need specific questions that you guys have. My hesitation with, several of my hesitations with moving forward with something that's not a commission. I feel like the commission is the most formal way to invite the community to be a part of it. The second part of it is if it's not organized in a formal way, I don't know who's gonna do that work. I have a full-time job. I've been running both ends here trying to get this forward. I am not the person to lead a commission. I just don't have the bandwidth to do it. So it would be up to the community, somebody else who has maybe more time than I do. I'm passionate about it, but I feel it deserves like more attention than I would be able to donate, give, provide. So if we want more information, to have another workshop, I want to make sure, I don't want to waste everybody's time. I don't want to keep having workshops and not have something move forward unless it should move forward, which I think is where people are at. But I want to be able to give you guys the information that you guys need in order to get questions answered.
Mayor Pro Tem, then we still have a motion on the floor. We need to.
Right, and this is a reference to that. Councilman Kirsch, looking at the recap of last workshop, I can see 4 questions that were brought up by council, possibly 5. I think those are the ones in the next workshop that could be addressed. And one thing that's come up at least 3 times was, do we need 9, business owners, certainly residents? Those seem to be the questions which are consistent. I think those are the ones we need to tie down for the council.
I think those were some of the questions that I was hoping to kind of review tonight. If we're gonna move forward on an ordinance, I want to put that information into the ordinance so that then we know what we're dealing with in the next.
Correct. I think the challenge is we have a motion now to put it on the first read ordinance, and in my mind, we've not established what the ordinance is, the clarity of the ordinance. Because now what's come up is it going to be done through an ordinance, so therefore it's an official committee or just a group? I'm in favor of the ordinance. That's the direction I would like to see go. But there are questions here, so let's address those in the next workshop. And I think we can move forward. I can move forward. I can move forward anyway.
I think that one of the things that I heard that kind of made my ears stand up was this idea of neighborhood ambassadors. Okay, I like that idea, and I'm wondering. One of the questions that I had was, instead of just opening this up to 9 people or 7 people or 5, whatever, can we first pick neighborhoods and pick people out of those neighborhoods? Then we've killed 2 birds with 1 stone. They're on a commission, but they're also neighborhood ambassadors, because then that gives you the 2-way street that you're looking for. They come up with ways to do it, and they bring it back to their own neighborhood. Okay? That's things that requires a little bit more thought than just saying 9 people, right? And that's the kind of thought process that I'm looking for, all right? I'm not just throwing something up against the wall and saying, oh, well, let's throw an ordinance up, okay? I want to throw an ordinance up that's going to serve today, tomorrow, and next year. So,
With that said, I am going to, because I respect you as a member, and I respect what you do, I respect what all of the colleagues have said, I'm going to withdraw my motion, only to allow you that opportunity to revisit some of the things that we talked today, and bring to the table, as a result of everything that they said, so that your motion with a second not fall, because at the end of the day, there are still questions the members have. And I would hate for this issue just to die today, where it appears it may not get all of the yays that you need, regardless of the motion in second. I would do that on behalf of this effort that you're trying to put forward, and we're happy to talk to you more about that, but I think that it would do the best thing for your effort is not to let it die today. To bring back more information that changes a few things, you've reassessed a few things, and you've gotten with other people, community members, because I know a lot of people are, coming to you and telling you about their interests, et cetera. I would hate to see it die for lack of not qualified liaisons.
Okay, so real quick, if you don't mind, Councilmember Kurtz. So what I'm hearing, bring back another workshop to explore some of these other ideas that have come up tonight. And I guess the question is when, and then whenever you.
Next meeting. So what I need from the council is your specific questions. I can't manufacture answers. I need your specific questions, so that I know what you need me to address. And we will go through the ordinance line by line. I think that's the best way to do it. We'll just go through it like do the rules and procedure, go through it line by line, do red lines. Does that please council? Does that work? Do you have another method?
Go ahead, Councilmember Follier.
I, for one, was gonna ask, do you have a draft already put together?
Yes,
The one that we had last week.
yeah, a couple meetings ago.
Okay, yeah, I would love to do that, do a red line session on it instead of jumping right into a first read. So at least we can at least have the verbiage 95% of the way there if possible before it gets to a first read. I'm in favor of it, but I just would like to see us work together on the document.
So, and we need, and in essence of time in future meetings, we see how long it's taken us to get through the rules of procedure, something that was already in place. Make sure we get the feedback, if you can get it to Councilmember Kurtz and, Katie and Ann, and myself, if you could copy me on theirs, that'd be great.
So are we asking for feedback in between now and the next meeting, or are we asking for feedback after we come back to the next meeting?
I think, at least in my opinion, I think it'd be helpful for you to get that before, because you said you want to know what questions they want answered, and maybe comments along the way on the ordinance, so we can all be prepared when we come back at that next meeting to discuss, instead of having to go off the cuff on some of the discussion.
So either I bring back the ordinance that we had, the same draft that we had 2 weeks ago at the next meeting, or you have that draft today that you can send comments and I can make edits to have prepared for the next meeting. Option 1 or option 2?
It sounds like option 2 would probably be more efficient.
Okay.
So, and I'll offer, Sean did review the ordinance, it had very minor changes. So we will take that first thing in the morning, I will send it to all the council members. And what do you think, a week? Have a week, and you can send all your red lines back to me, and I will provide it to you, and we'll go from there.
All right.
We have still a motion though.
No, DG rescinded the motion.
Cancels it.
Yep.
Did I hear it from the second?
Point of order, but I
Thank you.
fine.
All right, thank you.
All right, okay. All right, next workshop. Lisa, are you still with us? You are up with regards to adopted housing legislation from the 2021 state legislative session.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I just wanted to, I realize the hour is getting late, so I will be quick, but there is a little bit of time sensitivity to this. So tonight I'm going to discuss a little bit of, discuss for the majority, House Bill 1220, which is emergency shelters and housing. And there's two components to that. One is the comprehensive component, and one is the emergency shelters and housing. There's time sensitivity involved with this one. So,
Lisa, you're cutting out a little bit. If you might be able to get closer to the mic or something.
Is that better?
Yeah.
So House Bill 1220 addresses both emergency shelters and housing. On the housing side, it establishes some new and pretty heavy lift requirements for the housing element of the comprehensive plan. The good news about that is that we won't really have to address that until the periodic comp plan update, which we'll start working on in 2023. But I want to make you aware of it because I think that it's going to be very challenging to address, and we may not be wholly comfortable with it. We'll be getting more information and more guidance from Commerce as we get closer, but there will also potentially be some grants that we could apply for to assist in development of this element. The other piece, and the one that's time sensitive, is requirements for emergency housing and shelters. So I'm going to talk first just on a high level about the comp plan. Next slide, please. So the changes to the Growth Management Act that was included in this really had to do with this planning for and accommodating housing that's affordable to all economic segments. So they kind of changed the tone of the general goal of the housing element of the comp plan. Next slide, please. And they had very specific requirements. So whereas we used to have to provide enough housing, demonstrate that we had enough housing to support the population that was allocated for our community, now we need to inventory and analyze existing and projected housing units needed for a stratified section of the population. So we need to understand what we need in terms of housing for moderate income households, low income households, very low income households, extremely low income households. Also, how many units we need of emergency housing, emergency shelters, and permanent supportive housing. And then we need to make provisions for the existing and projected needs. Next slide, please. The policy requirements are also pretty hefty. So we need to identify programs and actions to achieve housing availability by addressing gaps in funding, barriers in our development regulations, and other limitations. We're going to need to identify local policies and regulations addressing racial disparity, disinvestment, and lack of infrastructure availability, specifically to impacted populations. We need to identify and implement policies and regulations that are going to address the racially disparate impacts, displacement and exclusion in housing caused by local policies, plans, and actions. Next slide, please. And I'm sorry?
Lisa, hold on a second. Councilmember Langford has a question.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, Lisa. On that last one, you had a word that I didn't understand. You called it disinvestment. Can you explain that to me?
So disinvestment, so it would be areas of our city where we've allowed blight to continue, and that there hasn't been investment in that area, where housing stock is is degrading and diminishing and becoming blighted over time. The neighborhood I think of in the city of Spokane is Felony Flats. They refer to it as it's the West neighborhood. Anyhow, where you see, because of lack of investment, the quality and value of housing actually diminishing, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So we have to identify areas that may be at a higher risk for displacement, establish anti-displacement policies, and identify equitable development initiatives, including potential investment in low, very low, and extremely low income neighborhoods, inclusionary zoning, tenant projections, consideration of land that will be used for affordable housing. And the housing element has to link the city's goals and policies with overall county goals. So in talking to Commerce, my understanding is that instead of just having the population, the projected population growth allocated by jurisdiction, the county is now going to, working with the Committee of Elected Officials and the Planning Technical Advisory Committee, they're going to look at allocating the projected numbers of units needed for all of those categories of housing that I talked about. And we're going to have to address as a city how we're going to address our proportionate allocation for the range of the range of incomes that we're projected to have to deal with. And so it's a whole new world for the city of Liberty Lake. And I wanted to make you aware of it. As I said, there may be funding coming down the pike in the next biennium that we could apply to have that done. While I don't see us necessarily hiring someone to do our whole periodic comp plan update, I do think that I do want to make you aware that this is going to be a big lift, and I suspect it's going to be a little controversial also. So next slide. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I'll ask when you're finished. Go ahead.
The other piece of this legislation deals with emergency housing and shelters. And what it says is that we cannot prohibit transitional or permanent supportive housing in any zones that allow residential uses or hotels. And we cannot prohibit indoor emergency shelters in any zone that allows hotels. And the effective date of this is September 30th, 2021. It does require that we make amendments to our zoning matrix and zoning definitions. And just to give you a sense about how broad this is, hotels are allowed in all of our commercial and mixed use zones. Residential uses are allowed in all of our residential and mixed use zones. And right now we have a number of categories of special housing, including community residential facilities, community treatment facilities, crisis residential centers, and halfway houses. And all of those really fall under the category of either transitional or permanent supportive housing. And so we would have to allow those. We can have them, and I've been doing some research with Commerce, and I've got a question into MRSC. Also, we can allow them as a limited use and provide some standards for them. So I'm going to use some of the standards that we have for some of these others to try and help define what those standards are. The other thing is that we can give some consideration to the density of zones. So we can have a limit on the number of beds in a facility that is located in the R1 zone versus other higher density zones. And so we can look at that as well. Next slide, please. The important thing is that we have to get this done by September 30th. There's another House Bill 1023 that also will require an amendment to our ordinance, and we would there's not the same deadline on it, but it's an easy fix, and we can do this as part of the other amendment. It changes the capacity of adult family homes to 8 beds. And what I wanted to, so all of you may remember a couple years ago, we had changed our code to allow for adult family homes. They're homes that are dealing with provide assisted living for seniors or adults with disabilities. And the code requires that for up to 6 beds, we have to allow them in residential zones. They're considered residential. The only thing that really this changes is it expands that definition to 8 beds instead of 6 beds. And so that's an easy fix. It really just is a change in the definition. So we'll deal with that at the same time we deal with these other ones. Next slide, please. There's also Senate Bill 5235, which states that cities and counties may not impose or enforce owner occupancy requirements on accessory dwelling units. Good news is we already do not require occupancy for the dwelling unit. So that owner occupancy is not a requirement. So there's no change to our code. Next slide, please. So basically, I just wanted to make you aware of this, and I know that this was a busy night, but it is time sensitive. We're going to be having a public hearing on amendments to the zoning matrix and definitions going to the Planning Commission in August for a public hearing, and we'll be bringing this back to you for your first meeting in September to get to meet the deadline of September 30th. So that's the story, and I stand for questions.
Councilmember Fuller? Oh, were you just turning your mic on, or?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, I thought you had a question.
I do,
Well, okay.
thanks.
Yeah, you can read your mind.
Yeah, like, oh, that was weird. That was weird. Lisa, I obviously haven't read through these legislative actions. Is there any room at all to coordinate with neighboring cities to accomplish this task?
I do not know. In terms of the comp plan requirements, I think that there probably are. And I think that I think one of the other things that I did want to share with you is at the next meeting, I'm going to update you on the affordable housing tax credit. If you remember House Bill 1406, I think in 2020, you adopted it by, I actually know the ordinance number. I have it written down here, and I can't find my notes now. Anyhow, you did adopt that last year, and that's taking it generates about $35,000 a year in tax credit. And there was another piece of legislation that I'll go over in the workshop next council meeting that actually clarified some of the uses for that. So I'm going to go over that with you, and then we can talk about the possibility of going out for an RFP to use that. We may be able to address some of those needs through a contract and a sharing of resources elsewhere. The guidance, Commerce is going to have to come out with some significant guidance on this before the next round of comp plan updates. And there's a slew of counties on the west side that are going to be due for their periodic updates before we are. Their periodic updates are due in 2024. So we should have some good guidance from Commerce, and it's in their court right now to actually develop some guidance on this. But the numbers in terms of what we need to address in our comp plan are not going to be defined by us. They're going to be defined by the state and in concert with the county.
The last comment, affordable housing is certainly not that. Thank you.
Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Lisa, great information. Sometimes the audio is not real good on Zoom. Did I hear you say anything about the word granny flats?
No.
Felony flats.
Okay,
West
the reason
Central.
why I asked that, are you familiar with the term granny flats?
I'm sorry?
That's come up, granny flats, that's, I
Granny
know
flats. Oh, I'm
AWC
sorry. No. Granny flats are something different. They're the accessory dwelling units. And that is
Right.
really the term that people use.
Right. My question is that, does any of this align us with having to allow that within the city? Because AWC 3 years ago gave a talk on this, and I noticed legislators looked at this. The long and the short of it, for those who aren't familiar with the term that's granny flats, that it would allow or force us to allow additional units to be built on city property. Am I correct in making that a statement?
No, it's not on city property. An accessory dwelling unit is either.
I'm sorry, residential property.
Residential property. So our zoning code right now allows accessory dwelling units in all zones that allow residential. There are some standards that they have to meet, but they are allowed as a limited use. However, a number of the HOAs do not allow them. Not all of them prohibit them, but some do. And according to MRSC, there's nothing that if your covenants, if your CC&Rs prohibit it, that's okay, but the city cannot prohibit it.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions for Lisa? Sounds like you said, Lisa, it sounds like a big lift for the comp plan. Looking forward to finding out about the possible available funding to pay for some of that work that's gonna have to be done. So I'm looking forward to additional updates. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next, we have Chief Simmons, update on legislation related to public safety. We're having all kinds of fun with the legislature tonight, aren't we?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Thank you to the council. Todd, if you could bring that up, I appreciate it. Thank you. I know it's getting late. This is a very important presentation, probably one of the most important presentations I've ever given in my professional career, especially for the residents of Liberty Lake. So I'll try to keep this brief, but as informative as I can. Next slide, Todd. Again, this is a very important presentation. Why? Because for the first time in foreseeable history, we have 13 new laws that majority of them go into effect July 25th that are not only going to affect law enforcement, but they're going to have a tremendous impact on public safety in our community. Next slide, Todd. So again, this past legislative session, 13 new bills passed through the House. 13 of them will go into effect as laws, a majority of them starting Sunday, July 25th. You see the 13 here that are going to affect law enforcement and the community. I am going to focus tonight primarily on House Bill 1054, which is commonly referred to as the Tactics Bill, and House Bill 1310 that is commonly referred to as the Use of Force Bill. Now, on these other 13 bills, at the end of this presentation, I will briefly discuss how they will impact our agency and the city of Liberty Lake. Next slide, Todd. Before we start, I just want to go over the crime stats for 2020. It's relevant to these 13 new bills because I guess, I don't know if I'm putting this the correct way, they are handcuffing us in a lot of ways. And there's a fear that, again, that we're going to compromise public safety for some political issues, but I'm not going to read these, but you can see how crime increased in Washington in several categories in 2020. Murders were up 46% in 2020. One of the crimes that we investigate often, unfortunately, Liberty Lake fraud, you can see went up 131.3% in Washington, and it just goes on from there. So crime is increasing, and we're trying to find ways to combat crime. And unfortunately, in the opinion of many law enforcement officers and executives in this state, our job's about to get a lot harder. Next slide, Todd. The population in Washington state was estimated at over 7.5 million in 2020, but you can see there's only 11,000 fully commissioned law enforcement officers in the state. Our number per thousand dropped from 1.24 to 1.19 per thousand from 2019 to 2020. Washington state is ranked 51st in the United States behind the District of Columbia for officers per thousand. And in Liberty Lake, I believe we have, I think it's 1.24. Don't quote me, but I think it's 1.24. I just figured it out a couple minutes ago, and I'm sorry, it's not on this presentation. It's on another, say, presentation, but I think it's 1.24. is what we have. So, or a little right in there somewhere. Tonight, you heard me refer to these two terms often. Burdens of proof, reasonable suspicion versus probable cause. And this presentation will revolve around those two terms. And just to give everyone a quick lesson on the difference between those two burdens of proof, reasonable suspicion is when an officer has facts and circumstances or facts that a crime has occurred, is being committed, or has been committed. Whereas probable cause is when an officer has sufficient facts that a crime has been committed, is being committed, or will be committed, and an officer can act on that. He can make an arrest or an effect an arrest when he has probable cause. Next slide, Todd. So the first House bill I'll talk about is House Bill 1054. The areas that it affects are use of force, special weapons and tactics, canines, vehicles and equipment, vehicle pursuits, uniforms, and warrants. This picture and this slide I put here purposefully with the shotguns because I'm not getting ahead of myself, but the shotguns are a weapon that, as of now, we're no longer able to use. Next slide, Todd. House Bill 1054, again, covers several areas. I'm not going to read all of these. I'm sorry, does someone have a question? Okay, I'm not going to cover all of these. The ones in red, I think, are really important for the council and the mayor to understand. First of all, if we ever have a civil incident of civil unrest, a riot, or a small, again, incident of civil unrest, and we determine as law enforcement that in order to protect life, property, or disperse a crowd, there needs to be tear gas dispersed, we can no longer make that call. The person who has to make that call is the mayor. All city agencies have to consult the mayor to use tear gas, counties, the sheriff, and the state, the governor, to use tear gas. So there is one law enforcement aspect of law enforcement that now rests on the shoulders of elected officials, and in our for us, it's the mayor. House Bill 1054 prohibits the use and acquisition of military equipment. Fortunately, we don't have anything that's listed under the definition of military equipment, with the exception of our shotguns. Under 1054, any weapons with a caliber of 50 or with a fit that's greater than a 50 caliber, so 50 caliber and above, are now illegal for law enforcement officers or agencies to use. So that includes our shotgun. The shotguns weren't the issue. The issue was our less lethal shotguns, which also fall into that category. This was an inadvertent, this was inadvertently written, I believe. I don't think it was the legislature's intent to outlaw shotguns, so to speak. But because they said 50 caliber or greater, the shotguns fall into that category. Also falling into that category is our 40 millimeter and 37 millimeter less lethal weapons. So we have 3 platforms that are less lethal that we can use to minimize injury if we ever have to use force that are gone. This is actually contradictory to House Bill 1310, where they urge de-escalation tactics and the use of beanbag shotguns and less lethal weapons. And I'll talk about 1310 here momentarily, but this is actually contradictory to House Bill 1310. So that's something that the legislature is going to have to figure out. One of the huge issues is the restrictions on vehicular pursuits. Now, in order to engage in a vehicle pursuit, we have to have probable cause that a crime has been committed and the person who's committed that crime is inside of that vehicle. And also, they have to be an imminent threat to the public, and our ability to identify them has to outweigh the risk to the public. In addition to that, it is mandatory that a supervisor is notified of the pursuit and okays the pursuit. I'll get into a scenario in a minute and I'll show you the issue with that. Historically, we've operated under reasonable suspicion quite often when we're investigating crimes. So there's a huge issue with this probable cause. Todd, next slide. To get everyone to fully understand how this is going to affect not only our investigation of crimes, but the public's response to, not response to, but when the public calls and reports a crime. In this scenario, well, let's just say that a citizen that lives at Moulter, near Moulter and Valley Way is on vacation. They get an alert on their telephone that that their camera's been activated in their house somehow. From their telephone, they check in on their camera and they notice that their house has been burglarized. They see this gentleman walking around the interior of their residence. They also notice that there's a vehicle in the driveway that's not theirs. They call 911 to report that their house is being burglarized. They give a description to the dispatcher that there is a white male wearing dark clothing in their house. They're watching him take items, including a firearm from the house. And he appears that he's leaving now in a white crossover or minivan, and he is heading eastbound on Valley Way towards Moulter. Several officers respond to the area. As the officers are coming southbound on Moulter, one notices a white SUV with a white male wearing dark clothing going around the roundabout northbound on Moulter. The officer turns around on the vehicle, turns his lights on to conduct a traffic stop, and the vehicle doesn't stop. It flees for him. Starting July the 5th, we will not be able to pursue that vehicle for several reasons. Number one, in order to pursue, we have to have probable cause that a crime is being committed. And at this time, we only have reasonable suspicion. Our stop on this vehicle would be what we consider a Terry stop, a reasonable suspicion stop. We have reasonable suspicion that this vehicle is involved in the crime that was being reported. Also, in order for us to pursue, the crime has to be a violent offense as listed in RCW. And burglary is not listed as a violent offense in RCW. So there are two strikes there. We don't have probable cause that a crime is being committed, and also burglary is not a violent offense as listed in RCW. So we wouldn't be able to pursue that vehicle. Along with that, there's several crimes that aren't listed in RCW as violent crimes, including assault for domestic violence. So I don't know if anyone saw the news story on how this is going to affect domestic violence investigations, but unfortunately it is. There's going to be times where we have to let domestic violence suspects go because they either run on foot, and I'll get to that under 1310. We'll talk about fleeing on foot, or they flee in a vehicle. And under this new law taking effect July 25th, we will be unable to pursue those individuals. Next slide, Todd. So House Bill 1310 deals with use of force and community caretaking. Next slide, Todd. Under this new law enforcement officers will only be able to use force to protect themselves or others, but only when there's probable cause to make an arrest. Reasonable suspicion is gone. To make an arrest, effect an arrest, or prevent escape. And also to protect against imminent threat of bodily injury to the officer or others. But the big one here is probable cause again. Reasonable suspicion is gone. Next slide, Todd. Next slide, Todd. I won't need that one. So one of the, could you go back one, Todd? The scenario I'd like to give here is one that we see often. We've seen in our community. Citizen calls and says there's a male in the Yokes parking lot. Seems like he's in crisis. He's running around. He's talking to himself. He's swinging the stick back and forth.
Sorry.
He's hitting a tree. He apparently is
It's
suffering.
not even a
from
debate. They're talking about the.
He seems to be suffering from some mental issue, and often we're called and we go investigate those. If we determine that the person is indeed in crisis, if they're a danger to themselves or others, we can have them transported involuntarily to a hospital. If not, we can see if they voluntarily want to go get assistance. Under this new law, it ties our hands quite a bit when investigating incidents of persons in crisis. If we responded to the Safeway parking lot, or I'm sorry, the Yokes parking lot, and we saw this individual, there's one or two things we're going to have to do. We're going to determine whether or not a crime is being committed. If there's not a crime being committed, or that is someone being injured, assaulted, or property being damaged, chances are we're not going to contact this person anymore. Because if that officer gets into an incident where he uses force, that officer can actually be decertified as a law enforcement officer under this new statute. This has totally tied our hands when it comes to dealing with mentally ill or persons in crisis. Next slide, Todd.
Yes.
They used that example.
Yes.
Oh.
And it's not just in Spokane. This is because.
Again, House Bill 1054 and House Bill 1310, in my opinion, and I just gave a short abbreviated version tonight of this for time's sake, are going to affect the way we do things and affect public safety immensely. These other bills, again, affect our agency and the community, mainly when it deals with our technology and ability to keep records. I guess the biggest thing with all of these now is the state's ability with their new Office of Independent Investigations, which the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission runs, their ability to conduct audits for use of force, officer misconduct issues, et cetera. So it's imperative that we as an agency make sure that our technology and our ability to maintain records when it comes to use of force pursuits, misconduct, et cetera, is up to par. Next slide, Todd. And that's it. And if anyone has any questions, I'll answer those.
There's no audio.
How did that happen? All right, seems like we're having problems with the microphone. Okay, thank you. All right, are we all back on, Todd? Okay, sorry, apologize for that. Oops, with the microphone.
I have just a question. Sergeant Morgan, when did these all go into effect? I know the chief said some of the days were July 25th. When do the others go into effect?
They've already gone into effect, some of them, the last of them will go into effect on the 25th.
So some are already in effect and the rest are the 25th, okay.
And the rest are January 22nd of this year, or January 22nd of 2022 for some of those.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Mayor?
yes, go ahead, Councilmember Foley.
Chief, is there any action that we can take as a council to help with the situation?
You know, the only way that they're going to remedy what is the damage that has been done is an emergency legislative session. But I think first they need to find out, there's more issues here that I didn't get to discuss tonight. One of the issues is that these laws contradict laws that are already on the books, which is kind of confusing for law enforcement. I use the domestic violence situation as an example. We have a mandatory, there's a mandatory arrest statute in the state of Washington if an incident of domestic violence occurs within 4 hours. However, although we have to make a mandatory arrest, we can't pursue those individuals to make an arrest on foot and use force or in a vehicle. So, I know that there's going to be an injunction filed in regards to the issue with the shotguns. I know there are chief executives in this state that are refusing to give up their shotguns. Just to let you know, we did turn in our shotguns today. We started today removing those from the streets. So all of our shotguns, all of our select fire rifles, and all of our rifles that are fully automatic have been removed from the streets, which leaves us short on rifles, which means we either have to borrow rifles, buy rifles, or rebuild rifles. So we started dealing with that issue this week, removing those from the streets. So, I think right now there's just a lot of questions. Thursday, we as chief executives, I think 17 or 18 of us are getting together for a press conference. It'll be interesting to network and see with some other chiefs and sheriffs from outside of this area to see what their opinion is and what they're doing in person. And hopefully we can start to make a game plan on see if we can get some of this remedied. But right now there's just a lot of uncertainties and a lot of questions that we have to get answered.
Okay. All right, one more round. Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks, Chief. Keep us posted, and if there are letters we can write, phone calls we can make, if it'll help, just give us the narrative and we'll tackle it.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, fourth workshop. We are on to farmers market booth. Councilmember Kurtz.
In the packet, I think, in the packet, farmers market, yeah. Here, I haven't too, I don't know if we should have.
I have a hard copy. Is there any way that you can put it up on the screen? It's in your packet under number 9. I can.
Well, I can just go ahead and talk about it too, and if he's able to bring it up, then that's good. So I've noticed that the farmers market booth has been empty since the council made the decision to not allow elected officials in there. And I wanted to see if we could figure out what to do with the booth, whether we need to adopt any sort of policy about who can be in there or not. But I would really like to see the booth have, either, council members and or, the opportunity to have weekly guests at the farmer's market. We have a lot of nonprofits that might be able to use that space and support, there's a lot of different, parts of the city that we could highlight as well. So, I had sent out basically this email, right after that decision was made, and just pointed out that this would probably be the best place to discuss that. So I just wanted to bring this forward to the council to figure out, if we need to develop any sort of policy and procedure about who can be a guest in the booth. If the city and the council want guests in the booth, or something different. 3668.
Council, I'm going to go ahead and any comments or questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
No one else jumped in. Good suggestions here on their item number 2. Literally, all these individuals now have access to the booth. We've utilized them in the past. Winter Glow, I don't believe has utilized it.
They were there with us last
Initially.
year to try to do some fundraising.
Yeah. So actually, each one of these individuals have either participated or had the opportunity to participate. And I, for one, love the idea of having these people to have access to that. We've used it quite well. As a matter of fact, the first few years at Booth, Chris and I and Mayor at the time and Shane Brickner, council member, we used it, the 8x10, or 10x10, I think it was, with these groups. It became apparent, need more room, so we went to the 20 that we have now. It's worked out quite well, so I encourage us to continue in this direction.
Yeah, Scope has also shared that with us in
Yeah,
the past
Scope has,
as well.
yeah.
Things that need to happen differently for people to be invited into the booth this weekend, next weekend through the Reservations Farmers Market.
All right.
Councilmember Follier.
The first comment here, can we at least have a member of the council there, 2 markets per month? I'm not in favor of that. If council members want to be there on their own accord, support that. There's no issues with that at all. But I'll just speak for myself. I'm not going to be a Saturday farmers market person. I guess I would defer back to what the intent of the we'll call it a facility, but what was the original intent of? It was to give out information to our citizens. It's evolved, it sounds like, over the years. Again, I haven't been involved in it a lot, but it's just not where you're going to find me on a Saturday morning. And I take a little heat for that, but that's okay. So how do we gainfully employ the booth, as it's been called? Is that your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that I have any great answers. It looks like it's been well represented in the past by volunteers. I don't know that it's a great idea to direct it and make it that we're going to have somebody there every weekend. I'm in favor of not having anybody that's on the ballot there. So, you know, it can go back to what it was originally intended, potentially. And if somebody sees it as an opportunity, then allow it. That's all I have for you.
And the original intent was to give and get information. Right now, nobody's giving and nobody's getting because there's nobody there.
Well, I think that's one of my questions is if there's not going to be any sort of outreach to have guests there, I don't support using our staff time to set it up every week if we're not going to have a plan for how it's managed. So I'm not advocating for like to overmanage something. But if it's not going to be used, we don't have guests, I don't know that we should have our staff go and set it up each week to be empty. That's just my thought.
Pro Tem.
I would support though setting up, even if we don't have somebody there. And the reason why is this, is that Chris and I go back a long ways with this booth. We've been there, I mean, literally every Saturday. And it's really been beneficial for us and also the citizens to find out what's going on. What really changed with that booth is when we got the map on the back of it. That brought people in, because what happened before, what happens with the booth, I'm sure Chris would never go along with this. We have about 50, and I mentioned this before, about 50% of the people coming into the booth are new. They're live somewhere else. And they say, oh, what is this? And we show them the map, things of sort here. And then we have the same individuals there all the week. Every Saturday, they come in and say hi on it. And then we also have the citizens that come forward that are new to ask some questions. But the thing is, since we put the map in there, that's what drives it. Before, they would walk up to the booth, ask us questions, and we would talk to them. Now they come into the booth because they want to see the map. You know what they want to see? They want to see where they live. So even if we didn't have somebody in that booth, citizens will go into that booth. Why? Because they've seen it time and time again. Their mom and dad is in town, or their neighbor's in there, or something like that. And they say, oh, let me show you where I live. And they go to that. That is very positive. So even if we didn't have somebody volunteering in there, I still think it would be an advantage of that booth. Thank you.
Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Perhaps if we use it as an information hub, where if it is empty, then inside there are flyers that, or brochures that identify who their government is, that identifies who the government agencies and offices are. Perhaps an information brochure or pamphlet that illustrates the businesses that are in town, how many businesses, where are the local emergency facilities. So people can come in, they can look at the map, maybe find their home, but they also can take with them a leaflet that has information on it that's being provided, and then no one runs afoul of perhaps saying something that they shouldn't, doing something that they shouldn't. But it still is an area where you can give information. There's information to be gathered if they come into the booth. I don't know what the cost of having leaflets or flyers or pamphlets would be, but it is, if the intent is to let people know who we are, where we are, and what is here, then I think that would be a good alternative.
There always are, giveaways and, tons of things there that are on the tables. I guess my question would be, with regards to, who would be there to set that up, put that out? Who would know what was still appropriate to put out and whatnot? And that was part of what we always did. If there were new things, we always, we would get rid of old things.
That was time consuming.
Yeah. Any other comments? Questions? I take that as no change.
We do get requests to use the booth, and if you're a nonprofit, Liberty Lake-centric organization, Mayor, we can, continue to offer it to those groups that are trying to do fundraising or have an event or whatever. But it's very ad hoc, and we respond to requests that we receive.
Yeah, Friends of the Library were there promoting the soiree. Rotary's usually there with their own tent.
Right, and so I could call Rotary and say, you could use the city's tent, they're promoting right now room-wide. I'm sure Winter Glow has some fundraising activities lined up, and there's probably ones I haven't even thought.
And on the hub, any of the ones that we even mentioned earlier that are local nonprofit.
Right.
PTA, PTOs.
Yeah, the school district's been there when they had projects going on.
And they had a ballot measure, they wanted to answer questions. There wasn't any campaigning going on, but they were very clear, they wanted to provide information about the school board, whatever. So, we haven't been out asking people to use our tent, but certainly when we get asked, we can say yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think just wanting to let the commissioners and whatnot know that it's available and they can use it. It's not just a city council thing, but it's something that they they're connected to the city or a nonprofit, that they have the ability to use that, and they are welcome to use that.
And one thing, if the planning, especially the planning commission, if they're there, I think it'd probably be a good idea to run that by Sean and Lisa, because if there's anything that comes up with regards to an item that's gonna be a quasi-judicial hearing, we don't want them to run afoul of that. So just a caution for if they do use it. Okay? All right, so if there's nothing more on farmer's market, we will go ahead and move to general business, number 10. Mayor Pro Tem, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor. Consent agenda, I make a motion to approve July 6, 2021 City Council meeting minutes. Also approve item consent agenda 2, approve July 13, 2021 special City Council meeting minutes. Number 3, approve July 20th, 2021 vouchers in the amount of $789,770.73.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilmember Follier. Do we have any discussion? Comments? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, items 1, 2, and 3, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you, Mayor. B, action items. Motion to authorize the city administrator to sign updated Granicus software agreement. This is in a dollar amount of $14,688.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Are there any questions or anything? I know Kyle's on. Councilmember Langford.
This is the same software that we were talking about earlier.
We dialed it back.
We did,
We
not them, but
dialed it back for our current needs, but Kyle has the details, and I'm gonna guess Todd probably does as well. We've customized it for how we can use it, and there was a savings that resulted in like
$4,200 savings.
so is it still on the table for vote recording, et cetera?
correct.
Yeah, that's correct. One of the bigger pieces we removed from the agreement from last year was the vote-cast option that never really got implemented. And then we had a discussion with Granicus on getting a credit for that unused service on the first go-around. And we can add that to this package mid-cycle when we are ready to proceed with that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Curtis.
How are we using Granicus now?
Kyle, you wanna take that?
Yeah, so we use Granicus to build our agenda essentially, and so it is used by staff to input agenda bills, obviously ordinances, resolutions, basically all of the general business items you see here. And Ann compiles all that information, and it has a workflow aspect to it where she reviews it and approves it, gets sent to our attorney for their review and approval. So it's just formalizing that agenda process.
Any other questions or comments? Not hearing or seeing any. All in favor of approving action item B1, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Okay, we have no public hearings, we have no resolutions, we do have a first read ordinance. And
City of Liberty Lake, Spokane County, Washington, ordinance number 278. An ordinance of the City of Liberty Lake, Washington, annexing the property described on Exhibit A attached hereto to the City of Liberty Lake.
this is a first read ordinance, but there is an opportunity for the council to ask some questions or discuss if this is Central Valley. Not hearing any. Okay, we'll go ahead and move to the second read ordinance 269D. And
Ordinance number 269D, City of Liberty Lake, Spokane County, Washington. An ordinance amending ordinance number 269 passed by the City Council on December 15, 2020, entitled An Ordinance of the City of Liberty Lake, Washington, adopting a budget for the period January 1, 2021 through December 31, 2021, appropriating funds and establishing salary schedules for established positions.
Very good, thank you, Mayor. I move to approve ordinance number 269D, amending the city's 2021 budget.
We have a second?
Second.
We moved and seconded by Councilmember Langford. Councilmember Langford, do you have a question, comment? No? Okay. All right, does anybody have any questions or comments for Kyle? Kyle, do you have anything to add from prior discussions?
Oh, no, just a quick, I guess, brush up. We brought this up last month, and so this was a full-time position last year. And after we had evaluated the needs, this is a part-time that we transitioned back to a full-time. There is no increase in expenditures for this budget amendment.
Not for this year.
Not for this year, and then we're just reclassifying that as a full-time in the salary schedule.
Thank you. And since we are in second read ordinance, there is opportunity for public comment. If you have a comment on second read ordinance with regards to this change, please go ahead and send a note to Todd Henderson in the chat. Anything, Todd? All right, not hearing any citizen comments. We'll go ahead and all those in favor of approving second read ordinance 269D, please raise your hand. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 5 in favor. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 5-0. Okay, we now have no emergency ordinances. Introduction of upcoming agenda items. Katie.
Okay, so Mayor, we have a workshop at 6 p.m. on council priorities. And then we also have a workshop at 7 p.m. on community engagement. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
We do have a workshop on affordable and supportive housing, sales, and use tax by Lisa. We have an agreement with the Spokane Symphony that will be on the agenda. We have a change order with Lochner to address additional design for Kramer Road, and we will go over that in detail. This was scoped specifically to accommodate utility coordination and the like. Then there is, this is the good news, we got funding for a stormwater grant to do a master plan study so that you're going to be approving that grant agreement. We will also have an on-call third-party building plan review and inspection services to meet the demand of our community. We need to bring on an on-call inspection service. Lisa will have more information on that. And finally, there's a second read ordinance on the annexation with Central Valley School District related to the generally described gun laws. I see some quizzical looks from the council, but I'll follow up. Thank you.
Chairperson, looks like your hand going up.
Is that the last we have on the agenda? I'd like to say something after that, maybe before citizen comment.
Okay, yeah, I just had a quick thing for Katie, and there's one thing I forgot to put on my my report for last week. I did have a meeting with Kelly Lotz from Lyme. It's in our budget tentatively for 2022. I know we had tabled it at one point. My comment to him was, I foresee a lot of citizen engagement on the topic of Lyme scooters and Lyme bikes, just from what I've heard from the community already. But if we can just put a TBD in there for maybe, or we'll have some new council members as well. So if we can maybe just put that in for January or something for a TBD, just presentation for the council to talk about.
Is Kelly the point of contact?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. Councilmember Foyer.
Since we're talking about upcoming agenda items, did I hear earlier that we were talking about purchase of chairs for the council chambers?
So I sent a note to Kyle asking him, can't remember if we have an agreement with Staples or if it's Office Max. So we will get back to you.
We've met the end of the life.
Yes,
Did
we
we get a
definitely
motion
have.
for that?
No.
Thank you.
It's on my list.
You want to go on a field trip to Staples with me and test them out?
I don't have time, but anything's better than these. Thanks.
We'll get you an update on that. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to say that encouraging, the council has, I believe, really put a positive step forward to make the initiative to get here to this building and have our meetings, because I think all of us would agree that when we're in the same building and we see the person we're speaking to, that the meetings are more productive. And I would like to set a goal, I think, for the council, that by August 3rd, when we have our next meeting, let's do our best to have all the council here. Let's commit to that. Let's do our best to try to get as many staff here as possible. If there's a challenge with the amount of space we have out in here, they can be elsewhere, they can come in and give their reports. Zoom is great, but let's be honest, a lot of times it's very difficult to hear and follow what somebody is saying. The sooner we get back to normalcy, I think the more effective we're gonna be in doing the best thing we can for our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Foyer?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Councilmember Kurtz.
Totally committed to that, but I'm gonna be in Montana, so I'm gonna have to by Zoom. But I'm committed, I've been here, so.
Mayor, I have one question
Yes,
to
go ahead.
follow up on that. At what point can we allow the citizens back?
We've still got some IT challenges and some
Air quality.
air
Challenges.
quality
So
issues.
we had, an evaluation. We have a staff meeting to go over all of our options and recommendations and the cost of those options. That is scheduled for this week. So right now, what I want to do is get the facts straight on what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done, and how much it costs, and then bring that back to the council. So, we have some older systems here. I won't go into all the details. There's, I think, 4 different, furnaces, if you will, and air exchangers, and some of them are things that we might want to think about replacing.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I think there's always a possibility we won't be back 100% to be able to have all of the people who'd like to be here. But I was noticing tonight, we have 24 individuals on Zoom. When you count those, 16 of those were us, and also staff. So we really have 7 to 8 individuals that are there, that they don't have to be here. So I think we're always gonna have that there. I'm always in favor of going to continue to keep Zoom. It does get more individuals there. But normally we would have 3 to 8 in the audience. Right now on Zoom, if you take away everybody in here and also staff, we have the same numbers. But it will encourage individuals to be involved in Zoom. So maybe we won't be able to open this up as soon as we would like for the citizens. Maybe we can get a few as we move forward. But I certainly think with the space we have, that we can get our employees back in here, get back as normal as possible as we move forward. I must admit, that it can't be only me that listening to some of our staff give the information, it's difficult to follow at times. But I thought Lisa said Granny Flats. Thank you.
All right, then we'll go ahead and move to our second session of citizen comments. If you would like to make a comment, please send a chat to Todd Henderson, and you'll have 3 minutes. And nobody yet? I'll click through, make sure nobody has raised their hand that I'm missing. Nope. Okay, well, hearing no citizen comments, we also have no executive session tonight, so if there's no further business, look around, we will go ahead and adjourn. Thanks, everybody, for coming with us tonight.